Whenever I feel afraid, I hold my head erect and whistle a happy tune so no one will suspect I'm afraid. I can't whistle.
What is it?
You
may be as brave as you make believe you are.
We both went for the harmony. Amazing.
Believe you are.
Great. Welcome back. Hello. Molly, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm great.
We're good.
Or let me do this professionally. In 2023, we're going to be professional.
Finally. Oh, God.
Hello, listeners. Welcome back to the pod. This is Adam, your host. As always, I'm joined by RJ. Say hi.
Hello.
And Molly. Please say hello.
Hello.
Great. Now that everyone knows our different and unique voices, Molly,
based on that one brief
based on that
soundbite.
one
Absolutely.
soundbite, how are you doing, Molly?
I'm doing well. It was 70-something degrees here today.
Sure.
It's great living in San Diego. How are you two?
Great. I saw someone at work who I frequently talk about musicals with, and she asked if I had any recommendations, and guess what I recommended to her?
Zombies 3.
Zombies 3.
ZOMBIS.
ZOMBIS 3. Absolutely.
Fun.
So, and she was like, really? And I was like, yeah, I'm not even being sarcastic or ironic. This is a genuine recommendation. So, in this house, we stand zombies. RJ, I never ask you, how are you?
I'm okay. I felt very tired this entire week. And I can't tell if it is because it's so gloomy and cold out. It hasn't like snowed again since the Arctic storm, but it's just been gloomy and cold. But it's also possible it's because Adam and I have been staying up until like 1 a.m. every day this week.
We've made some bad choices.
We've made some bad choices.
I've been waking up late because of them. But
we went to a K-pop concert on Monday. On Tuesday, we recorded a podcast. On Wednesday, Adam recorded a podcast and then watched The King and I. And now we're recording this podcast. So we're just getting through. And then Friday's Drag Race. So like,
our lives are just content. You know what I mean?
There's so much.
Yeah.
You
I haven't
watched
started
Drag Race
yet. No.
I mean, it is a 2-hour commitment on the first week. That's a lot of Drag Race.
It's a lot, and I don't have a Paramount Plus subscription anymore. My brother does, so I have to like find a time when the family TV is available. Do you know what I mean? Like,
but it's not on Paramount Plus.
It's on MTV,
It's on MTV
this year.
How do I watch it without cable?
Good luck.
Exactly.
You get a VPN and you pretend that you're in the UK and you watch it on Wow Presents Plus.
Oh,
because they won't even put it on Wow.
Not for
they
the US.
hate young people now. What's up with this? I guess Rue's kind of always been like that.
Yeah,
hasn't she?
Rue famously hates the younger generation.
Rue famously,
unless they know the cultural touchstones that she knows, then she's like, well, they're fine.
Yeah. So we watch it at a bar here in Andersonville, and it was really fun last week. So I'm excited to do it again.
It was very fun. Usually what we would do back in the day is we would purchase the season on Amazon. And so the day after the episode like drops on Amazon, we watch.
So you can still do that. I mean, it's like $24, $25.
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
If you have that money to burn, cash to burn in your
pocket.
We'll
consult the budget.
Sure.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The drag budget for the year.
The exchequer. Absolutely. Okay, so this week I have the challenge to summarize. Here's what I'm going to tell you, Molly. Not only did I write this and then rewrote it and edited it.
Nice.
He also
I timed myself twice.
He did a dry run. Yeah.
Wow. We practiced the presentation today, everyone.
We did. I will be getting an A in today's class. Thank you so much.
I'm ready.
RJ, can you give me an intro?
Adam, this is your 1-minute summary for the movie The King and I, and your time starts now.
Anna Owens and her son Louis arrive from Britain to Siam, set to be the governess to the royal children. She has been promised £20 a month plus a residence next to the royal palace, but the king has conveniently forgotten the residency arrangement, causing immediate frustration. The king is given a new wife from Burma named Tuptim, but she is actually in a secret love affair with the man who accompanied her from Burma, Lun Ta. As the encroachment of European colonization looms ever closer, the king and Anna come up with a plan to hold a great banquet with entertainment to prove how modern and European the country is. The entertainment is a Siamese ballet version of Uncle Tom's Cabin, narrated by Tuptim, highlighting the anti-slavery narrative. After achieving the success of the banquet, Anna and the king express true affection for each other for the first time, but upon learning that Tuptim has fled with her lover, the king becomes emasculated and enraged. Anna is disgusted by the potential lashing that Tuptim will receive and vows to leave the country. On the day she is set to leave, she learns the king has fallen ill. She goes to his bedside to see him before he dies, and he convinces her to stay and continue teaching his children. As his son, the prince, proclaims that kowtowing will not be forced, the king passes away, and Anna weeps as she kisses his hand at his deathbed.
1 minute and 10 seconds.
Ah, I didn't go fast enough.
Yeah, I was.
It's still though. You really hit all the points, but you
did.
didn't dwell.
You
It's
focused,
lovely.
I think, on making sure that nothing gets dropped. But it was funny because you were reading it in such a common.
I was getting. I
Calm
should not have eaten that
pace.
chocolate like 3 minutes ago because I was like salivating for more chocolate during it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm gonna blame it on.
Yeah.
I'm sure our listeners actually would rather that we like take our time and speak in an intelligible voice rather than rushing
Yeah.
through just to make the arbitrary deadline we set for ourselves.
Sure, but that's not the brand. So we're
Yeah.
looking
The
for
brand is
brand
chaotic.
consistency.
Absolutely. From zombies.
I'm sure
to
you're right,
Rogers
Molly.
Neighborhood.
I am sure that the listeners want this podcast to be even longer.
That's what they're constantly writing us. They're always emailing, being like longer
You
episodes.
should see the reviews.
It's too short. What am I? What is this? A TikTok?
Yeah.
I need
My
more.
God. What is this, Vine? I don't think I've ever seen this movie. I don't have any memories of seeing this movie. Let me say that.
Mm.
But I know my mom likes this movie, but we didn't like own it. So I probably watched it when I was young, but I just don't have like a strong memory of it. And I also think when I was young, I probably saw either a community version or a high school version of it. Because I do have the lizard brain understanding of like when they do the polka, that it's very important culturally, and I don't think it's just through osmosis that I gleaned that. I think it's I did see it at a young
You did
age.
absorb that. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
But I don't have like memories associated with it. But the only true memory of this is like obviously the 2020, what year was that? 2012? Whatever the Tony's performance was where they did the revival happened with Kelly O'Hara and they did it on the Tonys. That's a great performance. That's an iconic moment. And also we saw RJ and I, and he'll probably talk about it too. We saw last year they just did The King and I at Drury Lane Theater out in the burbs, and we went and saw that. And they actually used a lot of the costumes from that
revival.
last Broadway production because they like rent them out basically. So it was beautiful. It was a wonderful production.
And I think like some of the choreography too, like they had
Mhm.
the choreographer.
Yeah. Yep. So yeah. That's my relationship with The King and I. RJ.
Molly, how about you?
Oh, I would say that this is like a perfect example of the kind of musical that I know about, have seen, but I don't have like a strong relationship, like a strong, like here's the one time it made a strong impression on me. It's just like part of the repertoire of musicals, you know what I mean? So like definitely watched it as a kid, especially remember loving the like whole Run Eliza sequence and all of that stuff. Know the songs, definitely, especially like Getting to Know You is the kind of thing that you would do in like a, musical theater review or like a class or something like that. So I very much knew of it. I think that I probably wouldn't have been able to recount exactly what the plot is for you if I hadn't just seen it, but knew the general gist and the famous music and all that stuff. RJ.
Nice. So as I was trying to write down the different times I've interacted with this musical, I came to the realization that this, to me, is what Sound of Music is to Adam. And I didn't realize it until I was writing down that like, oh, I interacted with this musical a lot throughout my childhood. And I don't know, I guess I just, I buried it. And then as I was trying to remember, like, I didn't realize how important this was to me.
I didn't
Such
see
a
you wrote
big
this down.
claim to say it's what Sound of Music is.
Yeah. So my first time I interacted with this was like you said, with very musical theatery. I was taking piano lessons at this like music school, and on our first recital, they made everyone sing "Getting to Know," like all the kids sang "Getting to Know You." So that was the first time I'd ever sung that song. In '99, there was an animated version by Warner Brothers.
This is true.
And Lea Salonga was Tub Tim. And so obviously anything that Lea Salonga was in, everyone in the Philippines like had to watch. So I remember watching it in theaters.
Contractually obligated to watch. Yeah.
Absolutely. As our national like gem. And then there was another like 90s version, I think, of like the original, well, quote unquote, original story, Anna and the King, which was Jodie Foster, I want to
Correct.
say. And it was like a drama. It was like full drama.
Yeah.
And I remember my mom watched that. So
My mom owned it.
Yes, I think my mom owned it too. So
Wow.
we watched it.
Tom Felton plays Louis in it. It's before, it's pre-Harry Potter, before he plays Draco Malfoy.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think just like through just being obsessed with Lea Salonga, like she would always sing "I Have Dreamed," obviously, like in all of her concert like albums. When the revival came out, I was obsessed with the soundtrack, so I listened to it nonstop, like in the 2010s era. And then in musical theater rep class in college, I sang this with Nieme, and we both sang "I Have Dreamed." And it was funny because during it, we were both like, we're two Filipinos singing this because she's half Filipino. So I was like, this is really cool that like that we were singing that. So we performed it for like our showcase, and it was like our song, and that was a staple. Like "I Have Dreamed" was a staple in my audition book for years. And then we saw the Drury Lane performance, like Adam said, and I thought it was like beautiful. The king was played by I can't remember his name, something Jacobs, but he originated Aladdin on Broadway. So, and he played the king in the production we saw. And then I just thought that it was just like, that was my first time ever seeing King and I full. I had seen this movie before, though, in preparation for the MT rep class. I watched the movie. I remember it was at our apartment in our like extra room where we took down the door because it's the room with our bathroom. And I remembered like sitting in the futon, like bundled up with,
in the haunted bedroom.
In the haunted bedroom, bundled up in our little futon that the legs broke out, so it was just on the floor, on my laptop with like a blanket. And,
just so crazy.
And like made
dead mice littered everywhere.
Dead mice.
Yeah.
Made my homemade popcorn in our roommate's popcorn maker because she had one, and it was just like
that was never clean.
And I was living. I had a great time by myself.
Let me just say, because I know Rita's freaking out, I just want to remind you that I did not live in this apartment, so the dead mice was not something that I was dealing with.
Nope.
RJ, when you say that this is like what Sound of Music is for Adam, are you just talking about the frequency of its like existence in your life, or are you talking about an emotional connection?
I guess I equate it to like, frequency of how many times he's watched it or like has experienced Sound of Music. But then also like I knew all the songs, like just like, I inherently already knew the whole soundtrack. And I like, just because I just knew all the songs.
I would say it's the closest thing
it's the closest thing I have to it.
Because again, you famously came to musicals, I think musical theater
High
as
school.
Concept later than I did.
Yes.
I would still say like the Sound of Music is an intrinsic part of who I am as a person.
It's like, that's
so...
that like define and yeah.
But that's fine. We love that.
It also, I feel like probably you like Mary Poppins more than this. Is that right, Adam?
Yeah, that's the thing, Adam.
No, sorry, not than this. Then Sound of Music.
Aren't you? Because you always say Sound of Music and Mary Poppins are like definitive, but but your relationship to both of those are different.
But it's like a favorite. It's like an overwhelmingly positive thing. And I guess what I'm trying to get at with RJ is like, do you feel overwhelmingly positive? If somebody mentions King and I, is your first reaction like, oh yeah, that one, I love it?
Yes. I think so. It's hard
Can
because
you have an uncomplicated relationship to this musical, please, RJ? That's what I'm trying to get you to. No, I'm just kidding.
This music is so simple. I don't understand why do you have complicated
it's just
feelings?
A human story, okay?
We're just not gonna have a lot to talk about with this
there's just really no
episode.
deep issues in this one, so that's why it's hard. I mean, I genuinely, I feel like if someone said like, do you know King and I, do you know blah blah blah, I would be like, oh my god, I love the music. I think like that's what I'm drawn into, like,
okay,
the absolute bops.
I mean, it's funny that we talked about Sound of Music because this, I should really say this comes before Sound of Music. So Sound of Music shares a lot of similarities with this and draws, I think Rogers and Hammerstein used this as like kind of a blueprint of how to set up the plot
Like a little
and the
sandlot
characters.
for them to, work
Mhm.
off of.
The King and I, the
Or-
film,
Oh.
based on The King and I, the musical, is based on Anne and the King of Siam, which is based on two memoirs written by Anna Leon Owens. The memoirs are called The English Governess at the Siamese Court, which was written in 1870, and The Romance of the Harem, which was written in 1872.
Can I do a pause on the background because I meant to look this up, but I didn't. Do we know why it went from being called Siam to Thailand, and if we should like avoid saying that word?
I looked up.
We
I
did,
looked
yeah.
up the year. It was like 1940 something when they switched. I did not look up if it's like inappropriate to say
The
Siam
Thai,
or
okay, in
Thailand.
1939, the Thai military government changed the country's name from Siam to Thailand, justifying that it was suitable to call the nation by a name that represented the country's majority and was popular with the people. Siam had been the name of the kingdom for almost 800 years. Okay.
I don't think Siam was like a name given by
Yes,
white
it was.
people. Oh, it was.
Okay.
In 13th century, it was recorded that the Mongol court referred to the kingdom as Xian, which was probably pronounced later as Siam. So maybe it was some sort of like a name given to Siam, to like kind of like the Philippines, where it's like King Philip's Islands, and so like it was a way for them to be.
Oh, but is it an is Siam just an Anglicization of the word that people used for their own homeland, or is it like we assigned you this thing that has no relationship to the actual name that you call your country?
From what it reads, okay, it changed to Thailand because the leader at the time basically wanted to be like, we're not a monarch, like we're not a monarchy.
They went from a monarchy to a constitutional monarchy.
Yeah, so it's like we're not that
Gotcha.
anymore.
Okay, so it's like outdated. It doesn't reflect the current
Like yeah.
governmental structure, but it's not like an offensive word.
Yeah, because they
Yeah.
still have like affection for this king that this is about.
Based off.
Perf. Okay, great. Let's learn more about Siam then.
Great.
Yeah, that'll be our homework.
I didn't know
I-
fact checking on Siam, by the way.
I
or
brought it
Thailand.
up. I remember being.
Here's what I have. Here's what I have on Siam and Thailand. Did you know the reason that like in the past 20 years there's been a proliferation of Thai restaurants in America is because the Thai government like basically what's the thing when the
It's like embassy
no
ambassador.
what's it called? It's
Goodwill?
diplomatic culturalization or something like that.
Sure.
But what's it called when like farmers are given money by the government? Subsidized.
Subsidies?
The Thai government like subsidizes Thai people who like live outside of Thailand to like open restaurants. So they have like packages basically that you buy into or you like choose to be part of, and it'll be like they have different classes of like how much, like how like what tier you want to like do a Thai restaurant at. Do you want to do like a walk-in, like it's almost like your corner Chinese restaurant where you just like get it to go? Do you want to do like a sit down? Do you want to be a little fancier? They'll give you the menus. They like give you the recipes of how to make everything, and it's like cultural
Honestly,
diplomacy.
Yeah, right.
It's awesome. I love Thai food.
Thai food is so good.
I think like all of us when we moved to Chicago, we all were like, "Oh, Thai food
Yes.
slaps," because
Thai
that was
food
my
is- 'cause-
experience. I had no idea.
Yeah, there's tons of Thai restaurants specifically in Rogers Park. I feel like
Yeah.
particularly like in Chicago, like that neighborhood is like really dense with Thai restaurants. And even here with that, I kind of knew that at some level in my brain. But like this is where I live in San Diego with my brother's family, like far out suburb, like not a ton going on. And most of the restaurants here are like chains, right? But there are
Mhm.
2 Thai restaurants within like 5 minutes of here, which seems like a lot for like one
Yeah,
particular
totally.
culture's
Mhm.
cuisine for like where we are. And it's great. We've been trying all of them and like comparing, and it's been really fun.
Thailand was the first country to like kind of put this practice into like an official structure, and like other countries since then have adopted it. I think India's adopted it, South Korea's adopted it, and I think Vietnam has also tried to do the same thing. So that's why like pho is really popular and like Korean barbecue is really popular because like these countries are like, being like cultural goodwill. Here we go. Smart. All this food is great.
Yeah, absolutely.
So anyway, the book Anna and the King of Siam again is based on these memoirs, and it is a semi-fictionalized biography of Anna. So she kind of took it and then added some flourishes.
Is this the most layers we've had on a movie that we've done?
No, I still think it's Camelot. I still think Camelot had the most like a hat on a hat on a hat on a hat made Camelot. But this is close for sure.
Also in the research that I did, so she wrote these memoirs and then there was a movie made of her memoirs. And so this movie references both the books, but also that movie because like people would have known that movie that had come out previously.
Which, do you have the year of the movie? Are you talking about the Rex Harrison 1946 film?
I was, wait, because this was 1944 when the book came out?
Correct.
So it must have been, I don't know, it was between the book coming out and the Roger and Hammerstein film being made.
Yes, okay, so yes.
The article I read referenced it as like a touch point for the film, yeah.
Yeah, so there's the memoirs, then there's the biography, then there's the Warner Brothers, the 20th Century Fox straight movie version, which is just the filmed version of Anna and the King of Siam, starring Rex Harrison, who we all know in musical theater as Henry Higgins, playing the King of Siam. No problems there. No problems at all. So that was 1946. So then 1951, so there's an actress, her name is Gertrude Lawrence. She is like in her later stages of her career. Her agent reads Anna and the King of Siam and is like, this could work for her as like a star vehicle. And so she tells Gertrude that she should buy the rights to make this a thing. So Gertrude buys the rights. So now they shop it to Cole Porter and they're like, can you make a musical of this? And he was like, no, thank you. And then she was like, well, let's go to Noel Coward and see if he'll do it, which is weird because he wasn't like a musical person, but whatever.
Yeah.
But she actually, the agent, I should have looked up her name, but she bumps into Dorothy Hammerstein, who's Oscar Hammerstein's wife. And she was like, oh my gosh, it's so funny that I'm running into you. I want to option this. We want to option this as a musical. We'd love to see if Richard and Oscar would be willing to like write the score for this. And Dorothy Hammerstein and Dorothy Rogers, first of all, both Oscar and Hammerstein, or Rogers and Hammerstein, their wives were both named Dorothy, which is very funny. But they had
2 dots.
They had read the biography Anna and the King of Siam in the late 40s, and they had been like, "This is so good, you should use this as like your next musical." And Richard and Oscar were like, "We don't like it." So she goes again to them to be like, "You should do this."
I wonder if this novel was it like more romance forward because it feels like very strong female.
It's
like
it's not. It's kind of. So just for everyone's placement in the Rodgers and Hammerstein oeuvre, where we're sitting, where this musical sits is we got Oklahoma, we've got Carousel, then we have Allegro, which is their huge flop. Then they have South Pacific, which is like the ultimate bounce back to be like, we're dominating again. So King and I is following South Pacific, and it's like, it's similar to Carousel in that it's like, well, can it beat that? So we're at that point in their career.
Okay.
So then Rodgers and Hammerstein again read the thing, and they're like, it doesn't work because the book is like just a series of vignettes and then strung together by like facts of Thailand. Like it's not. It's like
not anecdotal, kind of like
almost
episodic.
Episodic. Yeah. It's kind of like that.
Meet Me in St. Louis.
A little Meet Me in St. Louis energy, but probably shorter chunks.
Or like
I would
a
assume.
Devil in the White City, where it's like sprinkled in with like facts about what's going on in the time.
Yeah, because it's like historical fiction, right? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So they didn't like it for that reason, and they also they were hesitant about a star vehicle because they had never cast stars before. They had always made stars through their projects.
Mm.
And so they were nervous about, like, first of all, the budget that it takes to, like, have like cast someone of like stature, but also like the what comes with it when you cast someone who is like has demands and things that they like. So like
a woman with opinions.
Gertrude Lawrence at this point, she's like pretty famous. So she had started losing her voice. Like she wasn't as strong of a vocalist as she once was.
Mm.
So they were nervous about that. And she could be a bit of a diva. But however, Hammerstein called her acting ability as her magic light. She was like completely incredible on stage. Everything she did was like people soared about it. Like they loved it. So they end up agreeing to do the musical. So they start working on it. They change a few things. So Anne and the King, they were like, they can't be romantic. That's not the plot is not a romance between the two of them.
Mm.
There's like, obviously they have different upbringings, there's social mores that they have to think about. So that can't be the plot. So they move the romance storyline to the secondary couple, which is different from the biography. So the biography, it's like Tuptim and a priest, and it's not like a romance. It just is like Tuptim was with a priest, da 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 da. Like it wasn't like this super flowery thing. So they kind of turn it into like this heavier plot line.
She is in love with the priest, but it's just not like romantically written about, or
I wonder.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Because I was gonna say, like, is it like because she doesn't want to be there, so she forms like a. It's less
like,
companionship with someone that's not like involved.
I guess it could be that too. I don't know for sure. I didn't read the biography, but the way it was written was like
you didn't
it was.
read the whole biography for this podcast. You're
I didn't.
Such a disappointing.
I didn't. But if people start paying us, I'm willing to read biographies to do this.
Oh my gosh, absolutely.
That's Molly's dream, honestly.
Pay me to read.
Pay me to read.
Yes, baby.
So they basically give Tuptim and Lunta the classic like Rodgers and Hammerstein romance songs that like they weren't going to be able to give to Anne and the King. Mm-hmm. Rodgers then is still able to write his sweeping melodies, which they're very famous for at this point, while they can't write as much melody because Gertrude Lawrence again has a restrained voice, so they have to keep it. They have to keep her role pretty slim in terms of like the range of her singing. She still has a lot to sing in this. Yeah. In the musical. She sings a lot in the movie too, but she's a lot more to sing in the musical.
So she was the original Anna in the musical?
Yes.
Okay.
So she signs on, she agrees that she will not veto, she removes her veto power for like director and like casting. Oh. So she was like, I'm so willing to do this, you can cast whoever you want and I will not be able to say no. And that works for them, that's really well. And then she also agrees that the contract is she's going to open the show here, she's going to open the show in the West End, and then she's going to be in the movie version. This is like set out from the beginning. This is what we're doing.
Smart.
Richard Rodgers focused on different styles of music that could seem exotic but still play to a Western audience's ear. So he wasn't specifically trying to emulate Thai sounds, but more like dissonances and fifths that like we don't normally hear in Western
feels
music.
Different.
Yeah.
That's what he was going for.
It feels exotic. Hammerstein worked
feels oriental. Yeah.
Hammerstein worked on the characterization of Siamese language, and the king specifically opting to omit articles that we use in English, as many East Asian languages don't use articles in their speech. They also make him a more sympathetic character, and by doing so, what they omit is the torture and stake burning of Tuptim and her lover from the biography.
Oh.
Well, they don't omit it. They make it seem like he didn't do that. I mean, that's like a plot.
Right.
That he's going to whip her, and Anna says, please don't, and he doesn't.
Yeah.
So they changed it.
So anyway, that's, a change for sure. Jerome Robbins, who famously choreographed West Side Story, we talked about him before. He choreographed the Uncle Thomas ballet, and he also choreographed the March of the Royal Siamese Children, which drew great acclaim.
Absolutely.
Hammerstein struggled with the end of Act 1. After 5 long weeks of not knowing what to write for Anna's song, he landed upon Hello, Young Lovers. He apparently was like, this is the greatest thing I've ever written. I can't believe I did this. Slay to me. And he sent it to Rodgers, because Rodgers would write the melody, and then Hammerstein would write the lyrics based on the melody. So he sent it to Rodgers. He hears nothing. days later, they're on a phone call, and Rogers is like, "Oh, by the way, I got the lyrics. They're fine. That works." And Oscar was like, "Okay, great." And it's like one of the few times the pair did not display a united front because Oscar was very upset by it. He felt put out by it.
I'm curious.
Well, also, I was just gonna say, also they had like a famous falling out that we like still don't know the cause of. So like a few times before that one big time, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I was gonna say, like, do we know? I'm sure there's books and stuff that explain like their like personalities and stuff, but like, why haven't we seen like a movie or something? I mean, probably because the families, right?
Feud,
like,
but Rogers and Hammerstein.
Because they
well,
still
there's
have
the
a
Rogers and
stronghold to
Hammerstein
their
estate.
rights. Yeah.
So I'm sure they're not gonna let. There should be a musical about the two of them.
Yeah.
Honestly, it's silly if there isn't. But I'm sure they also. I don't know what you would write about though. Just is watching people write interesting? I don't think so.
I once saw a really great play that was just about Tyrone Guthrie and the guy who was the architect that designed the original Guthrie Theater. And if that was interesting as a straight play,
we can make
we
can do
Rogers and Hammerstein's
anything.
dynamic.
It can even be like a One Night in Miami $1 Million Quartet situation where it's like it is just Rogers and Hammerstein working on this one thing in this one moment.
Yeah, that's true.
Very Frost
It could
Nixon.
be them coming up with South Pacific after Allegra
flopped.
flopped.
Yeah.
So many ideas.
So they wanted somebody super theatrical for the king. Rex Harrison was a star of the stage, so they wanted him for the king, but he was unavailable due to a scheduling conflict. Then the original Curly from
Only
Oklahoma.
reason he was a bad choice.
Yeah. Then the original Curly from Oklahoma was like, I could do it, but you would have to pay me like a boatload of money to do this because I'm obviously a star now. You've made me a star. And they were like, no. So Mary Martin, who played the original Nellie Forbush in South Pacific, who's friends with them and a producer on this musical, she was like, you should use Yul Brynner, who she'd worked with before.
Oh, gosh, I don't know why I got excited that I thought that they were going to cast Mary Martin. That would have slapped so hard.
According to Richard Rogers, he came in, quote, with a bald head and sat cross-legged on the stage. He had a guitar, and he hit his guitar one whack and gave out with this unearthly yell and sang some heathenish sort of thing. And Oscar and I looked at each other and said, well, that's it. So Yul remembers it differently and said that he was like sent the script and was like, oh, this is really interesting. Like this character is very interesting. At this point in his career, he had basically stopped acting and he was only doing like TV film, and he was like directing a lot of television as well. So he had kind of like moved on away from the stage. So he was saying like, that's not really true because I didn't really want to go back to the stage, but I liked the character a lot. So who knows the truth? This is the most expensive Rogers and Hammerstein Broadway musical ever to date up to this point, even more than Allegro, which was obviously famously the flop. Opening night tryout in Connecticut was 4 hours long.
Wow.
Was this what? No, Camelot was 4 hours. What was the other 4 hour long or like super long? Was it Camelot?
It was Camelot.
Okay.
Yeah.
I couldn't remember if it
was
was
Camelot.
I feel like all of them have been like, so the 4 hour long thing, which like you can, again, that's how long our episodes should be.
Yeah.
That's what we're aiming for.
And movies should be 90 minutes.
Our audiences are clamoring for 4 hour episodes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So the first act, after the tryout, they cut so many songs out of the first act they needed in order to get the length down, but it seemed too bare. So Mary Martin suggested using a melody that had been cut from South Pacific, which is, it became Getting to Know You. And then Western People Funny and I Have Dreamed were added in the Boston tryout. So there was 2 tryouts. Okay. So Gertrude Lawrence, right? She's on this whole track. She's going to do Broadway West End movie. She is like sick a lot, very constantly, very consistently. Her voice is it's not getting better. She has a replacement come in a few times during the course of the run. So she was wearing, to be clear, she was wearing 75-pound dresses while walking and dancing around 4 miles during a 3.5-hour show 8 times a week. So This is like, I think she was like 51. So, but like 51 in 1951. You know what I mean? So it was like 8. You were 80.
Yeah.
She progressively worsened during the course of the show and passed out after the matinee performance on August 16th, 1952. She slipped into a coma and she actually passed away, and the autopsy actually revealed an undiagnosed liver cancer that she was suffering from the whole time. That was September 6th. The show was canceled the day of her funeral, and she was buried in the Act 2 ball gown.
Wow.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's very sad. So let's talk about the movie, which was directed or came out in 1956. It's directed by Walter Lang. The screenplay is by Ernest Lehman. It's based on obviously The King and I and The King of Siam, as I've already said. Produced by Charles Brackett. It stars Deborah Kerr as Anna Owens, Yul Brynner as the King of Siam, reprising his role from Broadway, for which he had won the Tony. By the way, it won the best musical,
Wow.
best actor, best actress. It won the top 3. Rita Moreno plays Tuptim. Martin Benson plays Kralahome. I don't know if I'm saying that right. And Rex Thompson plays Louis Owens.
They truly were casting this movie and they were like, how do we represent every ethnicity except for Asian people?
Yeah. The closest we literally get in this movie is Yul Brynner because his like grandmother was half Mongolian. So like that's the closest we're getting.
Yeah.
Besides, like there are some Asian like extras in the background.
Yeah,
but I don't think anyone with
like,
lines.
the leads.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the cinematography is by Leon Shamroy. It is edited by Robert Simpson. The music is by Richard Rogers. It is distributed by 20th Century Fox. It was released on June 28th, 1956. Its running time is 133 minutes, or it's 144 if you include the overture, entr'acte, and exit music. The budget was $4.5 million, and the box office was $21.3. It was the 5th highest grossing film of 1956.
Was Fox always like a done deal because they did the Rex Harrison movie? Like,
yeah, because they had the film rights.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So also remember last year, Carousel came out the same year. In case we had forgotten. So this is the same year as Carousel.
Okay. Also Fox?
I believe it was also Fox. I think Fox had also did all of the. I think they did all the Rodgers and Hammerstein ones. I believe because they do Sound of Music. I think it was Fox. So blah 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 blah. So since obviously Gertrude Lawrence unfortunately passed away, Dinah Shore and Maureen O'Hara, who Maureen O'Hara you probably might know as the mother from Miracle on 34th Street, they were considered, and Maureen O'Hara was actually cast, but then Richard Rogers was like, no, not for me, because her voice was like too high or something, I guess. But they were both singers, so then they were like, who should we cast? Yul Brynner's like, you have to cast
a singer or no?
No, you have to cast Deborah Kerr, who's not a singer, very famously. So then they used Marnie Nixon, who we've also talked about on this podcast, as a voice double for the singing of the film. Dorothy Dandridge, famous black actress, was initially cast for Tuptim to fill a three-picture contractual agreement, but her then lover at the time and director Otto Preminger talked her out of it because it wasn't the lead role of the film. There were also rumors that circulated that she didn't want to play a slave because she was black. Makes sense. Moreno knew an actress named France Nguyen was also up for the part and thought she would get it because she's actually Asian, but she didn't as she wasn't a studio player at Fox.
I'm guessing it's France Wen, right? Isn't that name usually pronounced Wen?
But it's not spelled, it's like Romanized differently.
Yeah, it's Romanized differently. So I think the way her actress name is pronounced is France Nguyen.
Okay.
You're right. Her original name is France Wen. She's also from Marseille, so I don't know how the French pronounce it, to be quite honest.
Yeah, another layer. This is like my ballet teacher in high school who
it's a hat on a hat.
Who learned French words from, or like my ballet teacher in high school had a German dance teacher, so he was learning French words as Russians pronounce them through a German accent or something like that. It was like a crazy, yeah.
So it's probably France Wen, but the romanization is very weird, so I don't know how it was actually pronounced. So she will come up again later this year when we talk about South Pacific. So keep France in your back pocket.
In your back pocket. I wonder if she's. I don't remember the South Pacific. I wonder if she's the girl. the mute girl.
Whoa, Archie. Tiang the prince in this movie and Kralahome, who's like the advisor or the prime minister or whatever, they all come from the original cast as well.
Okay.
Shall I tell you what I think of you? I have a full version of I Have Dreamed and My Lord and Master were all recorded, but were not filmed for the film. Not filmed for the film. They were not put to film. The film is banned in Thailand, as well as most adaptations of Anne and the King, due to its poor treatment of the King of Siam.
Okay.
Fox executives originally wanted the ending to be changed to be the king was mauled by a white elephant.
Excuse me.
Just a bit of drama.
Is
This
that
feels right. This feels
Because
like
they-
that should be it.
because he mentions it, doesn't he? He's like,
They mentioned the white
we
elephant
Find a white elephant
because it's a good omen.
Is there symbolism to it being a white elephant? It's like
I mean, I'm guessing
conversation
it's
is
like
coming for you.
it's like like
Oh, yes, probably.
yeah, it is symbolism.
Although
So-
Thailand was not ever colonized, but
Correct.
areas
Yes.
around it were.
We did look that up because I was like,
Thailand is the only
It's the only
Southeast
Southeast
Asian
Asian
country that was not colonized, and it's because of this king.
Absolutely work.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's literally because of him.
So then
basically.
I
It's crazy.
I don't blame Thailand being like, no.
Yul Brynner was not thrilled with that, so they did not have that happen. Brynner clashed with the director often, and many of his ideas did end up making their way into the film. I would assume it's because he had like directed enough that he was like.
I know what I'm talking about.
I know, yeah. Marnie Nixon said later said that her voice was too high for this role, but she was only 21 at the time of recording. They modified the microphone, catching her voice, using a sweetener to deepen the tones of her voice.
Oh,
And then
What
they
is
would.
a sweetener?
It's like just like an additive to like modify the sound of the microphone or the audio itself.
Is it like a physical thing?
I would assume so.
Okay.
They said they added it to the microphone.
I'm
I
gonna
don't
look it
think-
up real quick.
I don't know if there was software back in the day.
Yeah, because I know like a sweetener in like a live performance is like basically like a
Sweetener was not the term
Sweetener
used. That's what I interpreted.
oh
the thing
that's
is.
not the jargon.
No, it was like they added. I don't
Like a
remember what it was.
box probably.
They
or
added
like
something to the mic. Okay.
Yeah.
It's not. It's just picking up pictures of Ariana Grande when I try to look for sweetener microphone.
Oh,
so
yeah. So
It's a microphone with a ponytail.
they would have her sit. Didn't make sense to me when I read it, so let me say it and you can tell me if this makes sense. They would have Marnie sit on set
Mhm.
and sing while watching Deborah Kerr's mouth movements so she could replicate the way Deborah Kerr would.
So they were like recording it as she was watching Deborah.
Yes.
act. Okay.
But she
Oh,
instead of
child.
like instead of
Instead of Deborah's voice?
Deborah trying to look like she's pronouncing,
Yeah.
they did it backwards.
she's lip
It's-
syncing Marnie.
It's like
Marnie's reverse lip syncing Deborah.
Yes.
It's like a version of what's happening in Singing in the Rain, but then also the version of In Greatest Showman where they're like, just sing and then we'll match what your mouth moves with the music, right? Because isn't that what happened? Like he wanted her to actually just sing it while she was performing the role.
Oh
Something-
yes.
yeah.
You're talking about the opera singer.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. It's all of the movies we've ever talked about, all rolled into
It's all the
one.
tricks.
And then that I can talk about later. At the Academy Awards in 1957, this was nominated for Best Motion Picture, Best Director, Best Actress, and Best Cinematography Color. And it won the Academy Awards for Best Sound Recording, Best Scoring of a Musical Picture, Best Costume Design for Color, Best Art Direction for Color, and Best Actor for Yul Brynner.
Wow.
It's his only nomination and award
Hmm.
ever.
Hmm.
This was a huge year for Yul Brynner because he was also in the #1 movie of 1956. Say it with me, The Ten Commandments.
Oh, which one was he?
He's Ramses.
Oh,
He's like the second lead of the
Ah.
film.
I was about to say, which commandment was he? Thou shalt not.
Yeah, he was the second commandment. Yeah. You Can Bear Arms, The Right to Bear
I
Arms.
love number 4. I'm just
Oh.
like real big on 4.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Honor your mother and father, honey.
I think that's it. I don't remember actually. I remember that the first 3 are like the big 3, and then
Yes.
4 is the beginning of like also do these, but
Yeah.
like the first 3, those are the biggies.
Yeah, it's like God is God is I think the first one.
Yeah.
It's like look, it's that guy and that guy only,
And that's it.
and that's what it's
period.
all about. That's my memory of the 10 Commandments.
And iconically, Moses comes up in this film.
That's true. Moses supposes.
Oh yeah.
And and Moses comes up in Guys and Dolls. We have talked about Moses multiple times.
We need
we
an
have to do
article
Prince of
on
Egypt.
the role
have-
of Moses in musical theater.
Yes, we have to do Prince of Egypt.
We have to do
Absolutely.
Prince of
Or
Egypt.
yeah, oh my gosh, is that on our list? I
We got
love
should
that
be.
movie.
Because we haven't done
So
an
good.
animated yet, have we?
Can we actually do
We
a
have
whole
not.
episode also just on the Whitney Houston Mariah Carey performance of If You Believe?
Oh my god.
Absolutely.
Patreon only.
A Patreon episode
exclusive.
of just that one. performance.
Yeah.
My last thing I want to say before we can talk about the movie, an hour in, a remake was announced by Paramount in 2021.
Okay.
They have not attached
Wow.
a director or stars or anything, but apparently a remake is in the works.
Yeah, I was told not to say anything, so that's why.
Oh, sure. Yeah, we'll keep it hush.
So
Do
And you're
okay,
playing Anna, right?
I'm gonna you and Mary Martin. I'm gonna pin this. I'm gonna pin this, but like, should we still do this? I think is a question we
It's
should
a good
discuss at
question.
the
Yes,
end
absolutely.
of this.
Here's what I will say.
let's
Okay,
rehash and then discuss it.
we're gonna end here, and then we're gonna go into the movie.
Yeah.
To answer Molly's question, I feel I still, while I understand, right, it's not perfect, I feel better about this than I felt about Carousel. Do you agree? Or do you disagree? Or do you think they're equal?
Do I agree? In some ways, I think it's worse than Carousel.
Mm-hmm.
Only in that I think that some of the ways that it is unacceptable are less obvious. And so I worry more that people will come away without having analyzed it as much as they should. I think in Carousel, I mean, there's still a lot of really problematic ideas about how men and women should relate to each other in
Yeah.
relationships. But like, I trust the audience to be horrified by Carousel more than I do the parts of King and I that are problematic.
That's yeah.
I think on the whole, The King and I attempts to present two fair points that neither side is fully correct in what they believe. I think obviously it's skewed more toward Anna. It's Anna's story. She has a name. The king doesn't even have a name. But I would still say that like there are things that she learns from the king and like Thai culture, Siamese culture, whatever we're calling it at the time of the film.
Yeah. But I also think that that is still based on this whole like East-West essentialist narrative.
Mhm.
Even if she learns stuff from the Thai culture in the movie, that like the way that it is framed and presented remains a problem underneath that.
Sure.
I read a whole article just about the map scene, but I want to wait until we get to that part of the plot.
Well, we're not. I mean, we can't. What are we doing with a Mercator map? My God, what year is it? 1862.
It was that Mercator map was a major portion of this article I read.
I know. I'm very into map
Significant.
culture.
Adam loves a map.
I love a map. It's true.
Passionate about maps.
Very passionate about
I know
maps.
what. I do know that we said we were going to go by theme, but also that like we have a list of songs. So I don't know if we want to like song by song and then like slip in the maps where it is
Slip in the
it
maps.
goes
Slip in the
song-wise,
maps.
or slip in
We
the
gotta
maps.
slip in the maps where we slip them in.
You know what the kids are always saying, slipping in my maps. So you know,
I think we still go by theme, and then I
songs-
know this show well enough that I can work in what we need to work in.
okay. So are we just going to be like Orientalism in this film. Like, let's just start with the biggie. Is that what we're thinking?
Yeah, we should probably start with
probably there.
Yeah, Orientalism.
I mean, okay, let's say this. It's offensive that everybody here is in yellowface. I don't know if we need to have a whole discussion of that, but like there are lots of problems with this film that aren't just people being in yellowface, but we should probably address that first as the most obvious issue.
Yeah.
Right.
Is there more that we need to say about the fact that like Asian people should be cast in Asian roles, or should we just
No, I think that covers
claim
it.
and
I think what's
forward. Okay.
I think what's troubling, I don't know. This is one of the most often produced musicals in community theaters and high schools in the country. It is done so often. I think it is, for Rodgers and Hammerstein, I think it's the most often done, which is
really
wild. Yes. I hope to God
to Buddha
that there are, I just hope that we as a culture have started realizing like you can't cast white people in Hairspray as the black half of the cast. Like you should not be casting, if it's about race, you cannot colorblind cast.
Yes.
There are some times where colorblind casting, that idea is like, could be beneficial, whatever. This is not one of those times, not time to experiment. There was a production that I read about, a revival in the late 90s that like went all in on Thai culture and like really, maybe this was my quote actually. Oh, okay. So there was a production where they like really tried to be like, we're very authentic. And like the obviously the 50s version was more of a caricature. So we're going to like really do a lot of research and put care and time into it. And it was in the 90s. So of course a critic of this was like, well, it's just trying to be politically correct, because obviously in the 90s politically correct was woke.
The new buzzword.
Yeah. So I have this paragraph to read because I think Molly might agree with most of it. Stanley Green, in his Encyclopedia of the Musical Theater, viewed the central theme of The King and I as, quote, the importance of mutual understanding between people of different ethnic and cultural backgrounds. But the director, Renshaw, felt the musical suffered from 1950s attitudes and Orientalism was used as an exoticism rather than a real understanding of the particular culture. So he stated that his production was informed by the authentic Thai cultural aesthetic and religious ideas that he learned from when visiting Thailand. A feature in Playbill commented that the production focused on, quote, the clash of ideologies and cultures of East versus West. Theater arts professor Eileen Blumenthal, however, called the production, quote, a King and I for the age of political correctness. While she acknowledged that the musical's treatment of Asian cultures had come to be viewed as insensitive over the decades since its premiere, she argued that Rodgers and Hammerstein's script was more sensitive than most Orientalist literature of its day, in that, quote, West learns from East as well as the other way around, which is what I just argued, and that moreover, the musical's treatment of its Asian subject is fantastical, not intended to be realistic. She concluded that the show is a documentary of, quote, who we've been in the West, and that The King and I should not be suppressed because it is, quote, too good.
I'm confused by adding the words, Asian subject is fantastical,
not intended to be realistic.
And then immediately followed that the show is a documentary.
Yeah.
Make it make sense, Eileen.
I mean, like, I'm not arguing for suppression, certainly. I don't think that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Okay. And the argument of there's worse Orientalist literature is like truly not compelling.
No. Well, people.
There
are other things that are also racist. I did.
But this isn't even remotely close to the racist things that are being said. Calm down, everyone.
Okay.
I know it's a lot to take it.
It's the fact that it all boils down to that this woman is like, it's just too good. Which is like really the crux of like anyone who has this opinion, which is probably even where my opinion comes from, that I like this more than Carousel, is that like I have a fondness and an affinity for it, so I don't want to see it like remove. Not that that's the argument that anyone's having,
Yeah.
but you start to get protective of the things that like whatever, blah 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 blah. But also like it's not great.
Yeah.
And even if you cast even if you cast all Thai people, you go specifically, you say, I'm not taking Filipinos, I'm not taking Koreans, I'm not taking Japanese. I'm only looking for Thai actors to really portray this experience.
That's gonna be
cut it right out. Even if you just do that, it's still like he is a caricature of a person.
Yeah.
He's not real. And Anna, while also being like not a total like human,
is more grounded
than he is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And more like a real person with like
Yeah.
I want to tell you about the map scene in this article that I read.
I feel like this episode is going to be, we're just going to we'll just posit multiple things out. And then I think,
yes,
let the audience.
Absolutely. So this is an article from Kerr Houston called Siam Not So Small, Maths, History, and Gender in the King and I from Camera Obscura, Feminism, Culture, and Media Studies from 2005. So it's a little bit less current than some of the stuff I try to bring in. But it says like, I'm going to look at culture and gender and all this stuff, but like specifically just through this map scene. So a big portion of this is the idea that, and is it Mongkut? Does anybody know how to say the name of the actual king this is based on?
I don't know. I would say it's Mongkut.
Yeah.
Mongkut I'm guessing.
Yeah.
I'm guessing how you say his name. So this is a real guy. And he was like a straight up real astronomer. Like he was very good at science.
He was very learned.
And so he was very interested in science, but like applied it well to the point where it actually caused his death because the royal astronomers had predicted an eclipse, but I think said like, but it's going to be too cloudy or something. And then he was like, let me do the calculations actually. And I'm pretty sure we'll be able to see it. So he like brought a whole like collection of like people in his palace, but also like foreign diplomats and stuff out to this forest to like watch this eclipse as like an FU moment to his royal astronomers. And the clouds cleared and they saw the eclipse and he was like, look at that, everybody. But he got malaria in the forest and that's how he died. So it's historically recorded because of the significance of why he was in that forest and what happened as a result, that he was like genuinely, so like the whole musical portrays him as like he's into science, but he like really clearly doesn't understand what that means. And he like doesn't, they said it's like a childish understanding of science in this article. And that it also portrays Siam as sort of, what do I want to say? Where's my brain going?
No, girl, you read the article. We didn't.
It goes into this idea of like places in the East having sort of like a fixed culture and not progressing over time until they're met with Western forces. That it's like, it's as if like his culture has been the same. It's just been like the same thing for hundreds of years. There's been no change or growth or like dynamic things happening in Thailand this whole time until he has to contend with Western culture. And that's like a big narrative that exists in sort of like an Orientalist view. So that idea that like Anna comes in and she brings modernity and she brings science and she brings reason. A lot of it was also analyzing the fact of like how Asian men have been feminized and that like this musical really like it feminizes him in the sense of being like the less logical one, right? And she comes in with like the logic and the science. They're playing with this like it's like a gender swap of like the woman is the logical one. And that this really comes through in this map scene and the map that they show. So they show a first a map that shows Siam is really big and there's this big figure of the king and Burma's small in comparison. And they're like, look, our king is like powerful and he has this armor. And then Burma's king is very poor and we're really, really powerful. And then Anna's like, that's cute. I have a real map though. And then she pulls out a map and they look at it and she's like, here's a new map from England. And then she like teaches them what the world's really like is kind of the point of the scene. So this map is actually in the original biography of the real Anna who went there. There's a scene where she describes it, although also apparently it was in some other guy's travel log. And so she may have plagiarized this passage, but it describes this similar thing of like Siam is portrayed as very large and it's got this big figure and everything. Also, interestingly, though, as it's described, there's the king of Siam, the king of Burma, but there's also an English colonizer for the English part of Burma because they had colonized Burma. So this musical just like ignores the fact that like Anna is very much not the only British person around in the region. And what all of these people though that wrote about it misunderstood is that was a religious tapestry. It was not meant to be a map of like the actual territory. So the idea of like, oh, they just like don't understand how maps work is like a fundamental misunderstanding of what this piece of art was meant to convey and like its purpose. The idea that Anna has a map is like totally inaccurate. There wasn't even really like a map of that area because the boundaries of the kingdom were not clear for a very long time, or like were clear for the purposes of the people that were like doing the political dealings with each other, but it wasn't like Europe came in and was like, your country has to have borders. And they were like, what are you talking about? So, but this idea that there would be like a holistic map didn't exist till like close to 1900. So this is like a 1950s map of the world. They point out like the United States is portrayed as like one monolith, and they were like, not only was Oklahoma not even a state yet, but like the Civil War was happening. So the idea that this is just like, that's America over there. And also this big moment, which is also based on the real biography of like, she says like, well, actually your country is quite small. And then the children don't like that. And she says, well, but the country I'm from is even smaller. And then they kind of go back on her side. That was a real thing that happened in the biography. But it points out, if you look at the map, you can see that the coloring indicates all of the colonies that England has. So it's like, yeah, it's the same size, but only if we're like just talking about the island part. We're kind of like ignoring a lot of other ideology of what this map is portraying. So I think that all of this is to say, my concern is that this musical portrays the people of Siam as being like childlike, naive, not understanding things. The whole like sequence where his children comes in, he like grunts at them a ton, which makes it seem like he just doesn't have a language because he doesn't speak English all that well yet, rather than like he speaks a different language. Which I assume is that they were like, we can't get Yul Brynner to learn this much Thai. Like that's a lot for him to have to take up for this role. Nor can we like, we're not going to look up all of the language we would need to write all these lines. So I worry that, well, the message of like, you should learn about other cultures and you should let yourself be influenced by one another and like come to understand each other even when you don't understand each other initially is great. The way that they understand, the way that the whole other culture is framed, I feel like it's so fundamentally flawed. I don't know if we should still do it.
Yeah, it's still like running with the frame. It's still running with a Western point of view of like the original text, right? It's still a Western woman seeing how things are. And like, even when I was watching it, when we were watching the Drury Lane performance, like it made me think about like, it's that idea of like, yeah, like it's a having to contextualize what another culture is doing in how you in your like view of your own culture, and you're trying to understand it of like, oh, they're doing this because it kind of correlates and translates to how we do it this way. And it's like I that's just always my biggest issue about East versus West, because it's like it's not a it's a different way of doing things, but it doesn't make it it doesn't make it like worse, obviously, or like less efficient or whatever, that like we've as a Western like mentality have been like, no, this is the way of progress is like thinking in like with Western ideals. And yeah, it made me think about that when I first saw it live.
To make a musical about that, you have to reduce the culture so much to like fit in this nice little box so that it's like a thing that is knowable within a 2-hour period.
I also think about how like when you're in like a world history class in high school or whatever, it's all taught by like region. So like you'll go through like, here's Europe through the centuries. And then you go to Asia and it's like, well, here's Asia through the centuries. Whereas if you all taught it literally based on like time frame and what each place is doing at the same time, like a lot of the same things were being developed in different parts of the world at the same time, because we were all discovering the similar ideas, blah, blah, blah. Humanity is all, so that's interesting.
I think I will say that I think that way that the movie deals with the Civil War and like brings it in and makes you aware of like, oh, these are two things that I like don't think of in the same wavelength is interesting. And we will have a whole section on Run Eliza, I'm sure. But like, I do like the fact that I feel like I, especially as a kid, had a lot of trouble with lining up time periods, and this giving you this really grounding thing that any American audience can be like, oh, that time, okay, I know when that was, is cool.
Yeah.
I think I remember when I first watched this and was like, oh, this is the, like, hearing it, like, is shocking, because, like, you see this, but then you're like, oh, in America, like, the Civil War is happening. I'm like, oh, that's so lost in context. Like, I guess I didn't realize how far back that truly was.
Yeah. Let's listen to a little bit of the song that accompanies the map scene, which is
Getting to Know You. Getting to know you, getting to know all about you, getting to like you, getting to hope you like me, getting to know you, putting it my way, but nicely. You are precisely my cup of tea. Getting to know you, getting to feel free and easy.
Which really is the crux of the movie. We're all just trying to get to know each other.
we're just trying to understand each other. And Molly doesn't want us to.
Thesis song.
Yeah.
And that's what we're getting
I'm
at.
against cultural sharing is what I'm trying to get at. Yeah, I mean, look, this song's great. It's very sweet, and it's sung all the time because it is so applicable to so many contexts, right? Like
especially in like a learning, educational with young children environment.
Yeah. Right. So I just feel like I did a lot of music theater camps as a kid where it would be like, here we have a week and we're gonna like throw together some different songs and like make our own plot that strings it together. And so I feel like this song was in like 3 of those because it's like it's so easy to fit into other things.
Yeah.
So I do like this song. It's really
Yeah,
sweet.
I mean,
I always forget too that it's not to the king. Like in my brain, it feels like it should be to him.
Yes. Yeah. If we're having a conversation about this movie, but then we're going to take off the like it's 2022 lens, and I'm just going to view it as like what this movie in 1956 is trying to accomplish. I think this movie's really good in that it's like one of the most beautiful pieces of like production and costume design probably ever put to film. Like
so rich and like so vivid.
Yeah.
And, like, did not like spare any color.
No, or expense for sure.
Yeah, I mean, 2 like really rich things of like costuming periods, right? Of like a Thai royal court, so they have like such beautiful fabrics and like interesting silhouettes and stuff they're doing, and then a like English woman from the mid 1800s with the huge skirts. So there's like opportunity for contrast, there's opportunity for color, there's like a lot going on costume wise.
Yeah. They look so good. Everyone looks so good in this movie.
The article author also pointed out that one way that the king is feminized is because he's got that open shirt, and so he's like put in the position to be ogled, which is usually only reserved for women.
Well, what a concept.
And I was like, well, we're not complaining, are we?
No,
I was about like
he's so hot.
Yul Brynner looks great in this. His outfits look so good. That first outfit with like the bejeweled Nehru jacket with the like harem pants that I'm like, you could see this now. Like this is like a sleigh now.
Yeah, the costuming in this movie is truly excellent, and I don't envy Deborah Kerr having to be in like a sweatbox for like hours at a time.
Yeah.
Because apparently she lost 12 pounds during the making of this film.
Just like sweated it off.
Just like sweat. She would refer to herself
Give me those dresses.
as the wet Miss Kerr is what she called herself.
It's crazy that people ever wear those dresses.
It's so insane. I love like fashion history in that regard of like what we always keep like why everything would shift because of it's a reaction to a thing that just happened. So like it's the like we're in the Victorian era now, and so we're like women can't be touched, so we need to literally create a bubble around women.
Yes, they need
because
space.
they're so
and honestly,
important.
there are days where as a woman if I could just be enforcing some personal space through my skirt, I wouldn't be uncalled for.
Sure.
I did write down as well in the like final scene when she's gonna leave, so she's wearing her little satchel on her wrist. That I was like, I want Gen Z to bring back wrist satchels. We did fanny packs, and we do wrist satchels now.
Yes.
Yeah,
It was so cute.
Yes. I also think in terms of like a conversation about Orientalism, I feel like we really should talk about the king more specifically as like a full character, or the full maybe not character that he is, maybe caricature that he is. So I'll give you a little bit of like King Mongkut. So he was born in 1804. He died in 1868. He lived actually half of his life before he became king as a Buddhist monk, and he developed an ascetic lifestyle. Fuck, I looked it up earlier. Ascetic means like a very like stripped down, like a religious lifestyle.
as like as simple as you can get away with, basically.
Yes. Amish, but without the bonnets. So he ascended to the throne after his brother died in 1851. He was very educated, as Molly has discussed, and he had a very firm grasp of Western languages. He was able to keep Siam independent against encroaching European colonization in the region due to familiarizing his heirs and harem with the Western customs, which is expressed in the film.
Yeah.
In 1861, he requests for a British governess for the royal children. Anna was running a small nursery school in Singapore already. So Anna Leonowens, who's born in 1831, she dies in 1915. She's born to Mary Ann Glascott and Thomas Edwards. She's born in India. Her maternal grandmother being at least mixed race, if not fully Indian, because there is no record of her birth. So leading people to believe that she was like native Indian. However, Anna would adopt the story that she was actually Welsh, hence her darker complexion for most English people, and never revealed that she was born in India, all the way to the point that this did not come out. This information was not known to public access until researchers did like investigations after this movie came out.
Wow.
Yeah.
I love that English people are so disconnected from Wales that they just would like believe that a woman with Indian heritage was Welsh.
He's like, oh
Yeah.
she must be
Like it's
Welsh.
the catch-all for like a little off is just Welsh.
Listen, Molly, you say that, but Catherine Zeta-Jones is Welsh.
And you could literally cast her, you know,
And she was in Zorro.
You can cast her in anything.
She's Wednesday Adams' mother. She's Morticia Adams, you know.
The two races.
The two races.
The two races, white and Welsh.
Yeah. POW. People of Wales. Person of Wales.
There is apparently still in the UK when you check boxes for your race, it's white and then white Irish.
Oh my god.
Oh, weird.
People.
Jesus.
But this does remind me of like when I met like back in high school when I first moved to America, and I had like classmates that were like, I was born in Hong Kong, but they were like fully white. And then it took me a while to be like, that doesn't make any sense. To be like, oh, British Hong Kong. Like and then just like that whole concept of like former colonies, people living like South Africa, you know, like you could say like Charlize Theron, and like, oh, they're white people. Okay, got it.
So the king had specifically sought like looking for like a British governess because a slew of missionaries had come through, and like they only just wanted to preach basically. So he was like tired of that being what was going on instead of like actual education, because obviously he valued education. So she receives the invitation from the king. She sends her daughter Avis to school in England, and she travels to Bangkok with 5-year-old Louis. Her husband has passed away at this point. They settle on a fee of 100 Singaporean dollars per month and a residence near the royal palace. So this is all true. She lived for a period with the prime minister
So
after
this is a documentary, is what you're saying.
the
Yeah.
documentary.
So Elaine was right.
Yeah.
Lived for a period with the prime minister after the first residence was deemed unsuitable, and then later a brick house was built next to the palace, and that's where they lived. So it being a brick house, which they reference in the movie a few times, that was also a part of the story, part of the tale. She went away in 1867. So this is like 1961. She comes to work. So in 1860. Sorry. So she comes to work for them in 1861. In 1867, She takes her like first big break. It's like a 6-month trip to go visit Avis in school, and then she's gonna take Louis and like put him into British schooling as well. There's some travel delays and then some chances to do a little bit more travel. So while she's away, the king actually passes away from malaria. She does not go back to Siam ever. That was it. That she never returns. She did keep in touch with the next king, who is in the film. He's the son. He was, I think, 15 years old when he became king.
Wow.
Chulalongkorn is his name. And later in their life, he actually reconnects with her on a royal visit to England. They like meet and have dinner, and he obviously expresses like fondness for her because he was her pupil at one point, so he does have like warm affection for her. But also her memoirs are known, and he like calls her out for being like, a lot of the stuff in there is like not true, and my dad was not a barbarian like you made him out to be. And she like tries to gaslight him and be like, no, I was all true. There's nothing fake in these books. And he's like, okay. I'm a fucking king, so like I don't need to like have this argument, but like you're out of your mind.
Give me that movie. I want that movie.
Right.
That's the
Yes.
movie.
Oh my gosh, My Dinner with Anna. And it's him planning this conversation.
Yeah,
So
I love
upon
it.
further
Absolutely.
investigation by researchers after this movie comes out, we realize that the entire story of Tuptim in the original memoirs is completely fabricated. This did not happen, which obviously, as we talked about earlier, the end of their story is the like torture and burning at the stake of them. So like she just made up this whole thing to be like, look how barbaric these people are.
Oh.
I wonder if there was like something that happened in the time she was there, like somewhere within the country that do you know what I mean? Like, was it just entirely made up? Was she
I need to
misassigning who did it? Like,
contextualize this thing that's happening here into the story.
right. Or was she just like, the English aren't going to believe that people are just like kind and generous there the way they are here. So like, I just have to.
Right. I mean, there is like a level of
violence
like,
up in here.
Yeah.
almost all cultures have put
Okay.
people to death.
Yeah.
So like this would not be new like we still kill people in America. So like it's not it's not gross to be like they probably like killed like the state killed people.
Yeah.
It is gross to like create this entire narrative of being like she was like his wife who was scorned. It's very King Henry VIII. It's very that energy.
Yeah.
Which wife is it? The third one?
No, it's the fifth one.
The fifth
Isn't it
one,
the second
Catherine Parr.
Because isn't it divorced, beheaded, died,
It's the
divorced,
second
beheaded,
beheaded.
survived?
It's the second beheaded.
It's Catherine Parr.
Second beheaded. Okay.
It's Catherine Parr. So anyway, yeah, it seems it's not great, and like we don't know to what extent how much of it is. I mean, I didn't look it up, I should say. So we in this moment do not know. I don't know if there are general people who know like where the factual inaccuracies are. But at least the second major plot point of this film is like completely fictionalized. Not even just from like
I mean, at least. Yeah, at
what
least
they
they changed it that he doesn't do it.
right,
But they
right,
did make it the central climax. And then I guess he dies because he just like isn't strong enough to whip a woman. And that's
Or
just like
was
so
just
upsetting
just
when he
malaise.
dies.
was so ashamed that he was emasculated. Like the emasculation was so
He's so
bad.
emasculated by his inability to do violence against women on Rodgers and Hammerstein's lifelong apology tour for terrible men that he simply wastes away.
Yeah. I mean, he is very operatic in like its scope of like how big all the emotions and like the fact that it ends with like a death on stage and like someone weeping at his bed. Like it feels very when we saw
Very melodrama.
yes, very melodrama. It feels like what was that opera?
Butterfly. You said or Madame Butterfly.
Yeah, Madame Butterfly.
Madama Butterfly that we watched.
Yeah. It feels like that to me. But that's also Oriental too.
Maybe I mean maybe that's a thing. Like at the time, the only way they can contextualize this is like if it's the Far East, the part of the exoticism is like big sweeping Madama Butterfly. Like there's unrequited love with like epic proportions in this like exotic setting. You know.
I do want to go back to you mentioned way earlier about like it not being a romance between them because I wanted to dissect that. But also, but before we get into that, I do think as well that it feels like because Anna, well, they both learn from each other. It's very clearly that Anna influences him more. And like the article I read was like, it seems like the end is implying she's going to kind of like be in power when he dies because
Yeah.
his like
she's like the smartest
8-year-old
person.
son
Yeah.
has become the king and she's agreed
Mhm.
to stay, and she's obviously, it like ends with the son being like, I'm gonna do this because Anna influenced me to do it, and his dad is like, yes indeed, I'm glad this white woman has given you guidance, goodbye.
Mm.
That also, because it is more her teaching them than it is her learning from them ultimately, it's like it has to be something so clearly morally wrong that she gets him to not do, right? It has to be something we like 100% everybody's going to be like, she needs to intervene here, right?
Yeah,
like
yeah.
no one's going to be against her saying like, please do not assault your wife
Yeah.
because she tried to
Mhm.
run away from the enslavement that you put her in.
Yeah.
Like that, we're all going to be on board, so it has to be so bad for us to all have the same reaction to it. So
Right.
yeah,
Should we listen
should
to
we talk about the romance?
Yeah, let's
no,
well
the
let's
song
listen
first.
Listen to
to
her.
let's listen to a puzzlement, which
Okay.
is the King's song. And then we can and we'll go from there.
There are times I almost think I am not sure of what I absolutely know. Very often find confusion in conclusion I concluded long ago. In my head are many facts that as a student I have studied to procure. In my head are many facts of which I wish I was more certain. I was sure. Is a puzzlement.
The reason I said that I wanted to include this song is that I wanted to say, well, I didn't appreciate, now that I know how knowledgeable this guy was in real life, him being portrayed as being sort of naive, and again with the like, oh, things were simple back in the day and now it's modern because England's here.
Yeah.
I do think that the way that this musical, if we abstract it from that, explores the complexity of knowledge is actually very interesting. And the way that he uses the word science, like there's literally a part where the kids are getting too rowdy and he
Mhm.
comes in and it's like, he's like, it's not being very scientific in here or something,
Mhm.
to me,
Mhm.
like ordered and like within the boundaries of what it's supposed to be. And that is really interesting because there's been a lot of study now of the way that like the narrative of science and logic and like therefore it is better has developed separately from the actual practice of science, right? Like
Mhm.
not necessarily as a critique of like actual inquiry, but rather the way that the word science has been used against people for scientific racism and all of those
Mhm.
ways, right?
Mhm.
That I think it's interesting to have this musical where people are like challenged on sort of fundamental beliefs and have to try to get their head around it, which is,
Mhm.
I think, partially because of the concern about making it into a romance. But then they were like, it has to be a different conflict. And I
Yeah.
do like that they have to explore this thing that is ultimately much more interesting than just a romance as a result of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think of the scene where the prince is saying that everyone knows that the world rests on the back of a turtle, and then he's like, no, the world is a ball, or whatever he says. But and like that exchange to me, like exactly what you're saying of like him having to like, okay, scientific truth, but then also like the type of truth that kind of guide the culture here, or like what we know is true and keeps things in order.
There are two characters that he reminds me of. One obviously is God, I always forget his name. What's his name in Carousel? In that a puzzlement feels very akin to the soliloquy from
Yes.
Carousel.
Yes.
And that
Yeah.
he's like struggling
Billy.
with like his
Billy.
beliefs. Yeah, Billy Bigelow. It also reminds me of Tevye in that like it's a character who's struggling with like tradition
Traditions, yeah.
and feeling like the world is going past him. I think of the three, probably the king handles it the best. But I think the reason that this musical is so okay, the musical is great music, blah blah blah. Musical is very spectacle based, it's very pretty to look at, blah blah blah, fine. At the heart of it, their relationship, Anna and the King, is so different from almost every other musical probably up until this point, until you honestly get Eliza and Henry Higgins a few years later, because their relationship is similar in the imbalance of the two. That I think that is why people are so drawn. Some of the attraction to this musical is that it is like they are two fascinating, interesting characters that seem
Are
to
trying to not one up each other, but like there's it feels like they're in an equal playing field that they're trying to like constantly push and pull.
Yes, I think in an interpersonal way. I think the
Yes.
musical is biased towards Anna, but I think in an
Yes.
interpersonal way they're
Yes,
very
yes.
much equals. And it's very Benedict and Beatrice as well from
Yeah.
Much Ado About Nothing.
I mean,
Yeah.
it
But,
is
like we enjoy their betting
it's
heads.
definitely
Yeah.
it's definitely the fact that I'm spoiling who my MVP is, but it's the fact that the she is the main character. We are following her journey. She is not the one that has a change in this musical. Like he is the one that changes. So he is like truly the protagonist in the true understanding of like what the character type is. But because she just like kind of is always the same. Like the change she has is she decides to stay.
She reaffirms, like,
but it's not a change really.
Yeah.
Yeah, because she's been
interesting.
threatening to leave from the first scene. When
Right.
she finds out that she doesn't have the house, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it is kind of a continuation to continuously threaten to leave.
I realized that I said
I'm gonna piss my pants.
no. I realized that I said that this like character type had never been done before, and I want to say this. In my investigation into the romance genre,
Oh
I also want to say this has two of my favorite tropes, which is enemies to lovers, we love,
Uh-huh.
and an
Yeah.
office romance. Because at the end of the day, is she not employed by her boss?
She is employed by her boss. That is,
That's
it has
apt.
to be true logically.
Yeah.
So
That's true. I simply can't believe that I still haven't convinced you to watch season 2 of Bridgerton. Like, I just think that every episode I'm going to try to find a place. I understand that it's straights, but like Jonathan Bailey is gay in real life.
That's true. That's
It's true. We have to
And
support queer
if you-
artists.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if you love enemies to lovers, and if you love, I mean, can we talk about the polka scene? If you love two people looking at each other and being like, we're going to touch and we shouldn't, but we're going to touch. Oh my God,
That's
watch
the-
season 2 of
That's
Bridgerton.
what's
the best
crazy.
part
That's-
of enemies to lovers, where they look and it's like the look is different now. Like you see the change of like this is a different intensity of a look now.
It is there is something too about like obviously the time period, but like this whole piece, the whole movie, the whole musical, they have been at each other. And
Quack,
like
quack,
but
quack, bicker, bicker,
quack quack bicker bicker. They're Daisy and Donald Duck. And the moment, and it's so good in the 2015 revival. If you go watch that Tony's performance, Ken Watanabe is the king, and Kelly O'Hara plays Anna.
Yeah.
The moment when they circle each other and they realize that they're like about to really dance, and he holds her waist. They're still standing far apart, and she like confirms that is what he is supposed to do, and then he pulls her in. Honey,
Girl.
You got a big storm coming.
my basement flooded. My God, and it's nothing. And then they do
They
a
do
polka,
a
which is
polka.
one of the most
Non-romantic.
Sexy
non-sexual
dance.
dances
No,
you
Yeah.
can do.
Absolutely not.
And then they end in like a huff, and then they do it again. But like the fact that it's just
watching this movie in 1956. I was like, were they allowed to put this on screen?
Honey, they
like,
had to redo the upholstery on the movie seats. My God.
Yeah, the absolute smut that that
Oh
20th century
God.
was
the
allowed.
work that those actors' eyes are doing is, I mean, it deserved its own award just for that.
It's so good. And both of these actors, whatever, people shouldn't have been cast, blah, 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 blah. Everyone is so good in this movie. I'm so sorry to say. I'm sorry to say it. I hate to say it.
Yeah.
Okay, we're talking about themes. We're talking about we just talked
Well, now
about
we
Shall
talked
We
about the
Dance.
polka. Let's listen.
So let's listen to Shall We Dance.
Shall we dance on a bright cloud of music? Shall we fly? Shall we dance? Shall we then say goodnight and mean goodbye? Or perchance, when the last little star has left the sky, shall we still be together with our arms around together, and shall you be my new romance? On the clear understanding that this kind of thing can happen, shall we dance? Shall we dance? Shall we dance?
I did want to say one more thing about the king, but maybe sort of just the whole court, which is that while the like pidgin English is like offensive in the way that it I think it's used to portray them as simplistic, and like I said, like there are times where it feels like they're just like not talking instead of just speaking their own language. I do love the trope of how can we like get to a deeper meaning in English by having a character who's using it in an unusual way because they're learning English. What was the thing that I wrote down as like a particular like there's a moment where he's mad because the English are going to come in and take over the country, and because they think he's a barbarian, and she says like that's a lie, and he says like it's a false lie. And it's like technically that's not correct, but it works. Like the double negative is conveying this greater emotion. Do you know what I mean? So like I do understand why this is an appealing setup for writers, because I do think it allows you to explore sort of the limitations of language and to get to deeper truths through kind of misapplying language. So I do really like that, even though there's a lot of issues with the like context of how it's being done.
And especially like even at the end when she's reading what he wrote her and like having to listen to her read like his broken words to convey like what he's actually trying to convey of like regret. It was just like, and then when she like obviously like cries and then makes her want to like see him again, it was just like
things that always work for me in movies and media. When an actor receives a letter and then reads it out loud. Things that don't happen in real life ever, but I love them when they happen in a movie.
Yeah.
And she really delivers in that scene, I have to say.
Yeah.
I do think, and I think this will take us into the wives. The one thing I don't like about their romance is that I feel that it is sort of implied throughout that she deserves to be like the real woman that he loves because his other wives are so subservient.
They're like,
And I mean, I think that there's some acknowledgement of like they have their own wisdom and way of dealing with him and whatever, but it's like so minor, and it feels so like, I mean, like technically he's married to a bunch of other women, but like unimportant because they're not like real wives is what it feels like the attitude of the musical is. And so like she's the actually important character in this. I don't love that, even though I do love their dynamic of being equals.
Yeah. I don't love that, but I do love the way, like what you said, like the way the wives have, we know this man, we know how to talk to him. You have to make it like it's all his idea when you're the one trying to convince him to like fix the,
which let me tell you is not something that women need to be told that they have to do. I think most women are aware.
I think most women are aware that is, exactly. And I think it's just, it's so that whole scene of her trying to convince him to do like the party or whatever.
But she's guessing how he's going to handle it.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I like this. I don't know what to tell you. It works for me. I get it's a problem. But what if we just like did the same story, but we removed everything? And it's just...
So just watch Bridgerton season 2.
So what if I just watch Bridgerton season 2?
I mean... I certainly don't think, I know you talked about that production that was like in the 90s and they were like, we're like entirely going to be accurate about the culture, all in. I don't think that just like casting authentically solves it. I don't think that like leaning into the real culture solves it.
No, you'd have to redo. You'd have to basically redo the script. I don't think the songs are the problem. Except for maybe a puzzlement, honestly. But I think I think you'd have to redo the script for sure.
It does make me think of the article that I linked for our West Side Story episode with the debate among like 6 Latinx scholars, basically, or like artists, talking about should we still do West Side Story though, because like it is ultimately like a bunch of white guys' opinions about Puerto Ricans. And I feel like it's a similar thing of I want like that level of debate, and maybe there needs to be a David Henry Wong redoes the book kind of a situation or something.
But even removing from that, like, should we even be doing this if we know that this woman's memoirs were like falsified? Like, if these aren't even true, to an extent anyway, you know what I mean? Like,
but if we're redoing the book, we could totally change the whole.
She could be the villain.
Tutkin. I forgot what her name is.
Tuptim.
Tuptim.
We could like totally redo the whole Tuptim thing because that's not in a song. So
It's true.
it's an idea. Rogers and Hammerstein Estate. Maybe relax for like a minute
They
and let us
don't.
fix some of this stuff.
Not a relaxed group of
Like, yeah.
people over at the RNH
No.
camp.
Offices.
Yeah. So we have started talking about the wives. So I'd love to discuss Lady Tiang if we can.
I will say
Mhm.
the Lady Tiang role live, I definitely liked more than like the film version because she
Yes.
does.
She's a little funnier.
She's definitely funnier, but she does have a presence over the wives and the children that I think in this movie gets a little lost. I think because they want to, like you said, like kind of pit Anna as like a quote unquote like the real like contender for the king.
Right.
But that's not to say I love her song.
Oh, Something Wonderful?
It's my favorite song in this whole show. And I know that the song is about how, now, yes, he may be mad sometimes. He may be aggressive. But one time he will need love. And that's when you can come in there
And shine.
and really help him out.
Yeah. It reminds me of the song that ends Kiss Me Kate, which we've not watched on this podcast.
Like, I believe men or women should be tamed. Or
Yes,
whatever.
it's
yeah.
I am ashamed that women are so simple, which is really it's just pulled from the monologue that she has in Taming of the Shrew. He
Mhm.
just put music to it. But that's what it reminded me of like men writing a song for a woman where the woman is like, "Oh, can you imagine us and this? You know what I mean? What are we going to do? It's men." Why? I think this song is so pretty, and if it was all sung on a la, gorge.
I know.
I'd love it.
Who writes the lyrics again?
Oscar.
Oscar?
Yes.
Oscar?
I will say he only does he only really does the dropped articles thing because he also did the book.
Mhm.
He really saves it only for the king. Everyone else kind of has
Mm.
pretty good English.
They do the same song in Carousel when she does the he's your lover, he's your
I
whatever.
know, RJ.
There's
It's a thing.
There's nothing more to say.
Yes. Yeah.
But it's gorgeous.
A lifelong apology to her for Terrible Man. This was the song that I wrote that line down for. Yeah.
And they are the greatest composers of all time. I don't know what
I love you know what? I love the instrumental version of this song. Oh, it's so beautiful.
just without words.
I think Adam, you're on the right track. It should be just sung in a law. I think that's where it should be. So let me sing you a little bit of the song. You will not always say
what you would have him say, but now and then you say something wonderful. The thoughtless things he'll do will hurt and worry you. Then all at once he'll do something wonderful. He has 1,000 dreams.
This would be my unfortunately this would be my drag number. I could make it a bit out of it, I think.
I also think I feel like musically it's very Mother Superior song from
Yes.
It's the
Sunny
same
Side.
character.
And it is my favorite that the matron in a Rogers and Hammerstein. Mwah!
It's the
which to me is
what's the one from
uniformly the most
Carousel?
boring character.
Yes. Huh?
What's the one from Carousel?
The aunt.
You Will Never Walk Alone.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, You'll Never Walk Alone is a better song than either of those, right?
Yeah,
Do we
yeah.
agree?
Yeah,
For
I
sure.
think that's the,
Okay.
the
For sure.
best.
That's their
version.
best one, for sure.
Although when I tell you my mom goes
You don't think it's the
My mom
farmer
goes-
and the cowbell should be friends?
when I tell you my mom goes off for Climb Every Mountain, I mean that is
Well, what
her.
mother doesn't?
Uh,
Is there a mother that's ever watched that movie and not been like, I'm a mother superior? Especially if they have a daughter.
Yeah.
I'm sure they're like, oh, oh, God. Literal God. at the kindest reading, we have an arranged marriage situation. At worst, it's sex trafficking, basically.
Yeah.
Things that have
He's
happened
really
in
like
history.
the original Andrew Tate in so many ways.
Where's Greta when you need her?
Yeah, where's Greta?
Where is Greta?
Go get a pizza.
Go get a pizza.
Jesus Christ. If you
My
don't know
favorite
about
YouTube
Andrew
video
Tate,
that
we're
I
not going to explain it
discovered-
to you.
Yeah.
We're not going to explain it.
not.
I'm
No.
not interested in explaining it.
No.
My favorite YouTube video that I found is a criminal attorney just watching a video of Andrew Tate describing his business and being like, "Here's how he is incriminating himself in this online tutorial of how to run this business." It's great.
Friedrich decided now he has energy. So she sold, it's not sold per se. She's offered definitely as a gift from the king of Burma to the king of Siam as one of his new wives. And she is in love with Lunta, who escorted her there basically. And then they have a love affair secretly. And Tuptim is not happy to be in Siam, obviously. And I would say in the movie, her role is greatly diminished from what it is in the musical, which is a shame because I do think she's like an interesting character. But you really kind of don't get that in this. And Rita Moreno has nothing to do in this movie.
Yeah.
It's kind of crazy.
She doesn't even sing the song, which is so crazy.
Yeah, that's not her voice.
She doesn't. Oh,
no.
wow.
She also doesn't look like Rita Moreno in this. And it's
Yeah.
bold to me. I am not giving a pass to Yellowface. Here's what I'm saying.
But
For like your random background extras, I can be like, okay, wild that you're just like casting people who aren't Asian. It's wild to like cast a Puerto Rican woman and just put like eyeliner on her
yeah.
and be like, and we solved it, and it's solved. So she doesn't look like herself. It's so crazy.
I think they also like spray tanned everyone, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, probably. Well,
Yeah.
Probably. I like the two Mexican twins who are the kids. Those are my favorite.
I was like,
'Cause
those
they
the
didn't
kid
do
who
anything.
played-
They just put a
The
costume
kid who
on.
played the prince was actually Filipino. I did look that
Yes,
up. So
yes.
we
He
got
was in-
one.
he was in the
He
first
has
season of
lines.
MASH. He like had a
Was
career.
he?
Yeah.
See, Southeast Asia.
He's also
Okay.
in whenever we get to it, he is in the flower drum song.
Oh,
So whenever we get to
Okay.
that, he's in that. So we'll see him again
Yeah.
someday.
I think that ultimately my feeling on this B plot romance is that it is given nearly no time, and I don't have any feeling at all for
No,
either of these
it's true.
characters.
it's really just there so that way he can be challenged and be a barbarian.
This plot line
Yep.
is the one where I was like, oh, they really grafted the Von Trapp story onto this because this is Liesl and Rolf. Because Liesl and Rolf are the B plot. Obviously, the ending is different.
Yes.
Although they don't end up together, so it's not terrible. The
I
circumstances
think you're
are different.
doing the thing. I
With
think
the
you're doing
Mary
the thing where
Poppins
like
thing.
there's a Julie Andrews movie that uses this other very common trope, and you're just
Yeah.
acting like they invented B plot romances, and that's not true.
You don't think it's similar? You don't think these two movies are
I
similar?
think it's similar in the way that it is a trope of musical theater to also have a B plot romance.
But Adam's saying they invented the trope because they literally wrote
They did.
sound
This
music
is
after this.
yeah.
I guess I can see, yes, you're saying that there's a direct influence of this.
It's
onto
wild
Sound
for
of
me to
Music.
put Jingle Jangle as Mary Poppins. I will agree with you there. It's not too crazy for me to be like, the people who wrote one musical then that was successful used the same idea to create another successful musical. I don't think that's a reach, Molly.
I just think that like Shakespeare was doing B plot romances far before
I didn't
Rodgers
say they
and Hammerstein. It didn't
invented
make
it.
us that. It's like that's what you were saying.
Well, use your ears. It's not what I
roll the
said.
tape. Roll the tape.
Well, let's say-
No, I'm saying that because they they always have done a B plot romance, but I feel like in the way that the two couples are, the main couple is like kind of cold to each other at first, but then they fall in love, which they don't fall in love in this, but they end in a more familiar place. Whereas the B plot is like two young people who are in love.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas before, in the earlier ones, there are obviously two couples, but it's like the main couple is the like heavy duty romance, and the B couple is like the comedic romance. That was like the switch, I feel. South Pacific is a little. No, South Pacific is in the first version. This is like the first time they do this second version where it's like older, wiser couple.
Yeah.
That was my whole point. And that there's kids and she's a
You
governess.
should've made more of the point quicker.
Oh, thank you. Well, I think this whole podcast should be quicker, so we can agree on that.
I mean, we're almost there. We're almost about to meet the.
Do you want to talk? Let's listen to a little bit of "We Kiss in a Shadow."
We kiss in a shadow, we hide from the moon. Our meetings are few and over too soon. We speak in a whisper, afraid to be heard. When people are near, we speak not a word.
My only thing about this is that I Have Dreamed is a better song than We Kiss in a Shadow, and so I'm sad that.
I Have Dreamed is a beautiful duet. It's really, truly pretty. Yeah, it is a shame it's not really in this. But
Can you play a little bit of I Have Dreamed?
Oh my god, I'd love
Absolutely.
to play the last
Which version?
version.
Okay,
The animated.
there you go. I'm not playing the animated version. I'll play a version that she has sung outside of the animated film.
Okay.
How you look in the glow of evening. I have dreamed and enjoyed the view. In these dreams I've loved you so that by now I think I know what it's like to be loved by you. I will love being loved by you.
I am not playing an animated version of The King and I that everyone says is bad and has like singing animated flying dragons in it. Why?
Warner Brothers fully like, we can do the Disney shit too.
Girl, Rodgers and Hammerstein was like, okay, go ahead.
Yeah. The estate said, yeah.
The estate, and then ever since then they were like, nope, we're buckling down. Nobody can ever touch our work
Yeah.
again. We made a mistake. Let's talk about slavery.
Yeah, Small House of Uncle Thomas.
Small house.
This
of Uncle
is the first time in a long time that I was like, wait,
What are you gonna say?
Yeah.
You like the ballet?
you can't be that shocked until you hear
You like the
the whole
ballet?
sentence. This is the first time in a long time that having gotten a PhD directly impacted my knowledge of the thing that they were doing. I'm not making a comment on the ballet right now. I did also like the ballet though.
Yay!
I did want to tell you that I know because I took a class in 19th century spectacle that Uncle Tom's Cabin was one of the most produced pieces of theatrical literature in this time
Oh,
period.
So
Wow.
it was commonly it was commonly done as
Commonly
like
adapted, often without permission or rights or giving any money to Harriet Beecher Stowe.
Yeah.
And that some scholars think that more people knew of Uncle Tom's Cabin via watching productions of it
production.
than having read the book.
Wow.
It was hugely influential politically in the end of slavery. It's kind of like credited as the narrative that turned the overall tide, like turned overall sentiments against
Mm.
slavery.
Uncle Tom's Cabin
And
is
it's-
to slavery. Okay. What's that one movie with the lesbians?
You're
Is
gonna
for
say The
Barack
Kids Are
Obama.
All
The
Right.
kids are all right for Barack Obama being in favor of gay marriage. And that, honey, that's a metaphor. Was it worth it?
Never. So Uncle Tom's Cabin, people did it a lot. Right. It really impacted people's opinion of slavery, and that specifically Eliza crossing the river. Often people would only do the novel up until that scene because that was like the scene. Everybody wanted to see Eliza crossing the river. They wanted to see how they put it on stage. Sometimes people would just do that scene because it was like the highlight that everybody, there's like the play the hits is like, we want to see Eliza cross that river. So the fact that they make that such a central part of it is like very true to the way that it was done, which is interesting because it's not like this was 100 years before this movie was made. Like now having that knowledge, a little bit of me thought, wait, would they have remembered that in some way and therefore knew to put that in? And maybe they did through your grandparents telling you stories or whatever, but I thought it was interesting to now have that knowledge that I didn't have when I watched it as a kid. I do also want to say that Uncle Tom's Cabin is an extremely racist book, but it was effective in its political aim of getting people to be against slavery while also introducing some tropes that ended up continuing to cause harm. But evaluating it of its time, it did get people to see that slavery was an evil institution.
Yeah. Well, as our good friend Eileen Blumenthal said, other things are racist too. So
it's true. So you're right. I should lay off Uncle Tom's Cabin.
This is so fucking effective. And
it's really good.
Of all of the ballets, obviously this one is the most different because it's a different spectacle. It's not a traditional ballet, but also B, it is like literally in the narrative that they are performing this. This is not a dream.
Yes, it's a play within a play.
This is not a concept. This is like, we are doing this piece on stage for the people right now. But it's still thematic and it still works. And I guess like this was the way Oscar was like, oh, it's 1862, slavery, Uncle Tom's Cat. Like this was where he was like, this is my in for understanding. Great. I really don't have much to say about this, truly, other than like, I love this choreography. It is the original Jerome Robbins choreography. The scene when they like, one of my favorite pieces of any Rodgers and Hammerstein anything is the scene when they like cross the ice and the like way that they like shimmy their feet to make it look like they're skating. Ooh, it's so good. It's so good. It's so good. It's so good. I don't have anything to say. This is RJ's favorite thing ever.
It's my favorite thing ever in musical theater ever. The music specifically, like it really pops off, and the dissonance, but then also the rhythm of the lyrics coming in at like not at the ends of the chords, like it's like run Eliza, run. Like it's like
George.
It like they're just all over the place. That makes you, it just keeps you on your toes and like wanting to like watch the story.
It's the most interesting, probably the most interesting piece of music that Richard Rodgers wrote.
I can get down with that claim. One, I don't know why only Uncle Tom has a blackface mask. Definitely get that out of there. Two,
yeah. I was like, if
don't
just
know
one,
how
then don't do
accurate.
it.
Yeah, we know the music probably isn't accurate. Don't know how accurate any of this like puppetry tradition is. So I would never show it to somebody as like an example of authenticity of anything.
Yes, absolutely.
But as just like purely a piece of art, is so good.
Yeah. When they do the reveal of Buddha in the sky, I was like, Mama, this is so good. And apparently in the original production, on stage, the production design was the throne room. And then there was like two other front drops in front of the throne room for like the boat that they come in on and like, I think her bedroom or whatever. And then when they do this, they completely strip the set and it's just like a black set. Like they're just, because they wouldn't have a stage.
Just, right.
And this is like the theater major part of my brain that's like, yes.
I also love the concept of like defamiliarizing something that is probably familiar to people. I mean, Uncle Tom's Cabin isn't super relevant anymore, but lots of people still read it in high school and stuff, right? And so taking that gaze we've had of like, here's the new and scary and different thing, and like turning it back and being like, what if this culture took something that you're really familiar with and then they
Mhm.
gave their interpretation. Like I was thinking about the fact that I'm pretty sure that like the whole like going up to heaven, I was like, I don't think that's how Buddhism works. But then I was
Yeah,
like,
it's
but like
not.
it is a huge part of the novel.
Yeah.
And I do like the idea that they were like, well, there's this whole thing about this like place she goes after she dies. And like, I don't really get it, but like, I think it's something like Buddha. So let's put him up on a ladder. Like
Yeah.
that's their
Yeah.
way of trying to make sense of the afterlife that's portrayed in this novel is like
Mhm.
really cool. And
Yeah.
I also love that speaking of religion, that the joke that I most appreciate in this is that he calls her earlier in the musical to talk about God creating the universe in 6 days and how ridiculous that is,
Mhm.
and something about Moses. And then there's a scene fully like an hour later where he says that she has a week to plan a party, and he goes, "This is how
Yes.
long
Mhm.
this that God created, that's how long God needed to create the universe or whatever." And I was like, that's funny. That's
Yeah,
good.
it's a good
So I
callback.
do think that all of the times where they get the one up on Anna, I appreciate, well, it's not done perfectly. I do appreciate what they were going for in all of those moments.
Yeah.
My favorite is the bit at the end of what is in the musical, the end of Act 1, where they're like where they're praying to Buddha and they keep doing the like her head can't be below his, so they end up like on the ground
Yes.
together. It's like a sitcom. Like it's like a weird
Yeah, there's a
sitcom
little
Yeah, it's
moment,
very
but
slapstick.
it's so
Yeah.
cute. They're so cute together. Ugh, I hate it.
It's cute. And I will say the one thing I wished was that in the final scene, he didn't have to say, "Why is your head above mine?" But we just had an unspoken moment where she like lowered
Lowers it,
herself
yeah.
to like signify that. I thought would have been a better move. So
yeah.
David Henry Wong, when you redo this book, can you change that moment? Thank you.
Let's listen to, I don't know, the entirety of the song. No, just
Not
kidding.
sure it's gonna slap as like a piece of music without the dance, but
I'm gonna put in a little bit of, I'll try to figure out what part is like the best part to listen to.
Probably. I mean, if the people wanted to see Eliza on the water, do the water.
It is like very pretty, that part, the musicality of it. Okay.
Now, as token of his love, Buddha send a new miracle. Send from heaven stars and blossoms. Look like lace upon the sky. So Eliza crossed the river, hidden by this veil of lace.
Also the best part about this ballet, as opposed to all the other ballets, is that it's not just a rehash of everything we had just seen for the past 2 hours.
It's a
Yes.
completely new story.
Yes, but still thematically appropriate to what's
thematic,
going on.
And they're like making the connections of like the act of Tuptim saying these words in her situation right now is reflective of like her. Shackles,
it's
you know?
the brilliance of two things, honestly. It's obviously the anti-slavery narrative, which is like Tuptim and I never remember his name, Lunta's storyline, but it's also the East meets West main storyline that's happening as well. So it's like very smart on multiple levels. It's like very clear that they really thought about making, like, this isn't like they just like put the biography to a musical and called it a day.
Yeah.
I don't know. It really works for me. So, do we have any?
It's a bit Hamlet play within a play.
Yes.
Yes.
Very classical Shakespearean in
Seeing
that
how
way.
many Shakespeare references I can drop in this episode.
Yeah.
It has to be more Shakespeare to counteract the Sound of Music references
Mhm.
to prove the point.
Yeah. It's actually really just Macbeth, honestly. Is there anything else that we want to say specifically about the movie other than just like
It's a
general
movie.
feelings?
I
Anything we did
think
not touch
that
on?
this story has legs. I have convinced myself the story has legs and we need a new book.
We need a new
And
book.
I
then
think it's the book, yeah.
it could be
I mean,
salvageable.
even like we said how good the book was in the New West Side. Like I think like something like that can definitely help
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I already like it as is, so I'm sure I'd like it even more with the new book. So, unfortunately, that's where I sit.
And I would like to throw the challenge of like it would be cool to see a new, if they are this new Paramount version, whatever, if they are writing a new book for it, to see in film like a full Thai cast. I think that would be so cool. And like I know obviously like Crazy Rich Asians, like they did an amalgamation of different like of the diaspora, also because it's like Singapore is kind of like an amalgamation of different
Right.
But I think it would be super cool also knowing just like how robust like Thai films are. I think they could easily do it.
And
I
Thai
think
Thai culture is so specifically visually rich.
Yes, exactly.
Southeast Asia in general, each country has their own like very specific thing, and it's
getting tired of like having to be like Southeast Asia. It's all like, you know, like a little bit of this, a little bit of that.
Right.
I'm like, I want to focus in on what makes Thailand so the reason why they were like the only non-colonized Southeast. Like I want to like see it fully in its.
Oh my gosh, and a new book that like focuses on how he resists colonialism. Such a more interesting plot as well.
Yes. As like rather than him trying to be like, I want to be like a European Western mind.
Have him be there and be smart, and as he was in real life, and be like, I know I'm gonna have to learn about this in order to like protect my people. And like
exactly.
That's why you're here.
That's the brilliance of it. Is like he leaned into Western culture because he knew that was like the way to like
protect.
Be like, oh look, we're fine. You don't need to come over here and give us anything because we've already got it. So like it's deal with the other ones.
Right.
I think we got a pitch.
Colonialism.
I think we got a good pitch going.
Yeah. So, what have people been saying about this movie? Critics, this is a 93% on Rotten Tomatoes. It is certified fresh. I have 2 reviews here. I have a very long review from the New York Times from when it came out, so I'll read a little excerpt of that. We'll jump to the end. As we said in the beginning, it is the pictorial magnificence of the appropriately... First of all, adjectives, mama. It is the pictorial magnificence of the appropriately regal production that especially distinguishes this film. Done with a taste in decoration and costuming that is forceful and rare. Forceful. The whole thing has a harmony of the visuals that is splendid in excellent color and cinemascope. The imagery is beautifully climaxed in the little hut of Uncle Thomas, which is now what it's called. Ballet, which sort of wraps up the quaintness, the humor, and the exquisite delicacy of the issues in this fine film. If you don't go to see it, believe us, you'll be missing a grand and moving thing.
Wow.
That is from Bosley Crowther.
Someone has a thesaurus.
Oh, on next to his typewriter.
Yes.
That's from Bosley Crowther of the New York Times. This review is from Dave Kerr of the Chicago Reader in 1985, so I'm assuming this was a re-release in theaters. I thought this was funny because it's very short. A typically overproduced 1956 Fox film of the Rodgers and Hammerstein hit, with Yul Brynner as the king, a part he would play for 25 years on the stage, and Deborah Kerr dubbed as the... First of all, why? Don't be shady. Yeah. Deborah Kerr, parentheses, dubbed as the British schoolteacher who comes to Siam to educate Brynner's army of children. Too long at 133 minutes, but the score is swell. Walter Lang directed in CinemaScope. That's the review. Not even that's the review. That's what Rotten Tomatoes is considering a fresh review.
It's in CinemaScope. That's great.
Yeah,
great.
I was like, "Where's?" He did say swell, so I think that's why.
He did say the score was swell.
Yeah.
But what are the people on Letterboxd saying? So you'll be shocked. Not a lot of hits on Letterboxd. You'll be blown away by this information. So I found some. Allwine gave it 3.5 stars and says, if Deborah Kerr ever left me and my 107 children, I too would want to die as I have lived in the most dramatic way possible. It's very funny. Billy Golden gave it 3.5 stars also and said, RuPaul is so mask in this. Which I don't love, but I think it's funny.
Oh my God.
And Kirby gives it 4 stars and said, amazing how the bald, sexist, half-goose man Yul Brynner could instantly get it. And to that, I agree.
Yeah. That's definitely not what you
I
came
wasn't
to
expecting
see.
him to, like, have a body. I was just expecting, like, just a regular situation. But I was, like,
Got something under those
pleasantly surprised.
clothes. Yeah.
Let's move on. Before we talk about the closer, who is your MVP, RJ?
I'm going to give it
Is
to...
it Eliza
No.
running on the ice? Like the audiences in late 19th century?
I am going to give it to the entire Royal Ballet performing the Small House of Uncle Thomas.
It's so good.
Honestly, the whole cast, from Tub Tim, like, reading, to the dancers, obviously, to the, like, the crew in the back, to
The choreography.
the choreography, even the, like, the small, like, details of, like, in the movements, like, of her crying as she was going to, like, about to ascend to Buddha. And, like, yeah, it's just so good.
Mm-hmm.
My other MVP that I would have brought up was Prince Chulalongkorn, because I thought that he was actually very good too.
Yes.
The performance was very, very much like he had, like, depth. Like, at first he was very stubborn, and then, like, became like, okay, I'm taking in these things because I know I have to as a king, but all of these contradict what I already know, to the end of, like, I'm not prepared, like, him being like, I'm scared, I'm not ready to
very
be king.
sweet.
It was very sweet. And for him to, like, find the confidence of, like, I will make my first decree. I want it to be something that makes it so we don't feel like we're
Boat races.
yeah. So
I love that. I think the prince is so good in this, and that's even with the amount that he has they cut for his role from the musical, where he really has a full character arc with like him and Louis kind of have, like, a buddy situation where they, like, don't like each other and they're, like, animosity.
it's the comedic version of the enemies to lovers that Anna and the king are having.
Yes. And they cut that, and that works so good in the musical, and he's still so good in this with so little to do.
And when I tell you,
it's very
Louis
impressive.
is not in this movie. He's in the beginning, he's at the end, and this child does not appear.
Nary a
It's
moment.
crazy. Molly, MVP?
I'm suspecting that Adam's gonna give it to Yule, so I'm gonna say Miss Kerr. Like,
She's
I
so
just
good.
think
dubbed.
we like haven't really talked about her.
She's dubbed.
She's dubbed. But even though she's, like, girl bossing all over the place in a really annoying way, I still rooted for her, and I still cared about her. She's just so dynamic on screen that, you can't not care about the character and enjoy all the little, indignant looks she gives to the king and all those things.
Yeah.
So she was great.
It's
Good work.
the fact that she is simultaneously in almost every scene able to, like, give you the, like, I'm so sick of him, but also I'm still really charmed by some of the stuff he says.
Yeah.
It's so that their chemistry is so good, and that's why it works so well.
For me, it's her moment of the March of the Children. And as more kids appear, she, like, falls in love with each of them little by little, to the end when she finally agrees to do it. It's clearly because of the children. And it's just like, it breaks my heart when I watch it. 'Cause she's like, it's slowly chipping away at the wall that she's trying to build of not wanting to be emotionally connected to this whole situation. But she totally does.
Yeah, Molly's right. I have to give it to Yul Brynner. I think this performance is so lived in. Obviously, like, he did it on stage, so he has been living in this performance for years now at this point. But it's so good. It's so nuanced. His song, A Puzzlement, is, like, the discoveries he has within that song of, like, the realization of, like, I don't know everything, and it's, like, frightening, but also, like, That's how it is. Like, it's fascinating watching a person who is told their whole life, like, you are basically chosen by God, more or less, to lead a nation, and be able to like grapple with that is very interesting. I also think he gives a lot of comedy in this.
Yeah.
And I love a comedic king. So
Yeah.
I would say Mr. Yulbrunner, he totally deserved the Oscar. And going back to Deborah Kerr, she gets a nomination for this. She does get a Best Actress nomination. This is her first of 3 consecutive years where she receives a Best Actress nomination. 3 years in a row.
Wow.
She's up for Best Actress. So she was like, she knew she
Top
could open
for
a
name.
film. Let's say that.
She was
Yeah.
a name. Yeah.
Yeah.
She was the Jodie Foster, because Jodie Foster won 2 years in a row. She was a little Meryl run right there for Miss Kerr.
Yeah. Molly, what's your closer?
Now, I did want to say that my original version of this closer was F, Marry, Kill, Curly, the King of Siam, and Prince Charming. But then I thought we were all going to give the same answer to that.
Mhm.
Which, just to confirm,
Just to
is
confirm.
we would kill Curly, F, King of Siam, and marry Prince Charming.
Yeah.
So I decided to flip it. F,
Okay.
Marry, Kill, Anna, Cinderella, and Lori.
Okay.
What you should have done is you should have done the like matron characters.
Should we do that?
Yeah, let's do that. Mother
So,
Superior.
Mother-
F, Marry, Kill,
Mother Abbess.
Mother Superior,
Yeah. Lady Tiang.
Lady Tiang,
And
who's
Aunt-
Cinderella? Stepmother?
no,
Oh, I
hers
thought-
would be the fairy
Yeah, hers would be the
godmother.
fairy godmother. But I was saying,
Okay, fairy godmother. Ooh.
then it's technically not Mother Superior. It's technically if it's Oklahoma. But no, let's do that.
Let's do Mother.
Mother
We were
Abbess.
talking
Oh,
about
well,
we were
it's another
talking about
Rodgers
Mother
and
Pierce.
Hammerstein.
Yeah.
Ooh. All right.
Oh my god. This is twisted, dark-sided. Okay, this is wicked.
This is cursed
This is
energy
cursed.
base.
Who
Who is
is
right?
would build a sustainable relationship is the real question here.
Okay, I'm gonna go first. I'm
Okay,
ready.
Okay.
This sucks. I
This
hate doing
sucks.
this. I'm gonna kill Mother Superior because and this is gross. This is gross. Okay? 2 reasons. I cannot fuck her because she deserves to have an orgasm because I know she's never had one, and I don't think I'm the person to help her achieve that. Period. Second,
What a comment. What a line of reasoning. That's science, everyone.
That's-
That is
yeah,
science.
that's logical. That's
that is
you know,
the square root of impossible.
So
okay,
mask, so
That is
science.
literally we figured it out.
I cannot marry Mother Superior because I think she's going to
in
give
it.
me a lot of guilt. A lot of the
Or I
time.
was like, she's already in a long-term relationship.
She's also in a long-term relationship with the man upstairs. So unfortunately, I am going to be killing Mother Superior. Jesus Christ. So we have Lady Tiang and Fairy Godmother. So I would say I would... Okay.
Sorry, which Rodgers and Hammerstein Cinderella are we talking about?
I think we just mean the character.
Okay.
I was not including the actress who played Mother
Okay.
Superior in my reasoning, by the way.
I'm sure she's had many orgasms.
I hope to God she did. So I would say that I am going to fuck the fairy godmother. Because I'm gonna marry Lady Tiang because the woman has already sung a song that was like, men can mess up and it's okay. So
This is the most thought that I've ever heard come out of Adam. This
So
is the most
deep,
thinking.
yeah.
so I am going to be okay in this relationship because I can screw up and she'll still forgive me.
Because she'll say,
Yeah.
So I'm like kind of set. And then like I'll fuck the fairy godmother, maybe she'll give me something out of it. I don't know. Probably not.
And she's not sticking around. You
Right,
know,
she's got to go at midnight.
The logic and reasoning behind that. Adam,
Thank
was
you.
Very, very.
Thank you.
smart.
What
Very
is Molly? What's your answer?
I mean, I'm not here for subservient women. So Lady Tiang is gone.
Sure.
Mm,
She's
okay.
out. You know, Mother Abbess.
I'm gonna pass. I'm choosing to pass away right now. I cannot with this.
Say it. No, Molly, say
The
it.
fact that the fact that we chose Mother Superior. That's the one. That's the one.
Say your
Continue.
truth. Say your
I'm
truth.
not saying it's like my kink, but I am saying that like
It
it
is
is
A kink.
it is a thing. And I'll just say like I'm willing to provide the service that Adam is doesn't feel up to the task of providing.
Yeah.
That's all we need to say about it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think fairy godmother is appealing. I mean, I think really it would be more of a domestic partnership situation for me than a marriage,
Okay.
maybe. But I do think
That's
that
okay. Yeah.
someone whose job takes them away frequently is very appealing to me as like a very independent woman. Like I'm not necessarily here for us to like live and work and like be all in the same place all the time. So like I got a jet is good for me. And I also think there've got to be some perks that come with that job, some spousal benefits that would be,
Ooh.
you know,
Mm-hmm. 100%.
would be good. So I'm gonna go with marrying fairy godmother.
You would never have to buy clothes. She can just bibbity bobbity something up,
Absolutely.
you know?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wrong fairy godmother,
I
but
know,
yes.
Wrong? Oh.
Bibbidi
I
Bobbidi
think
is
you're responding
Disney.
to my answer. Incorrect.
Okay, I will.
It's tough.
Because I am a person who, as much as I am like, I want and aspire to be like, I want to be a free spirit. I just want to like be open and like let the world blah 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 blah. I know in my heart of hearts that I can't do that. I was raised Catholic, and I need order and structure. So I do think that I would marry Mother Superior.
Wow.
Honestly, it sounds appealing sometimes to be like, everything's already figured out. You eat at this time. You sing some songs. We go to our devotions. Like fully just revert to like everything I was trying to like protest against when I was little, and now be like, you know what? It doesn't sound too bad. So I think I might appreciate what that could bring to my life.
Sure.
And
The church has never gone away, by the way, RJ. You can still go if you want, if this is what you're saying.
No. This is just.
You can't marry one of the nuns.
I can't
but you
marry-
can
yeah,
join
that's-
Yeah, if the subtext is that you want to start going back to church, feel by all means.
No.
My mom would be thrilled to hear that information.
No. I'm sorry. No. It's convent or nothing.
Mm-hmm. Sister Mary Clarence or nothing.
Yeah. All in or all out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I am going to.
Jesus.
I'm going to fuck Lady Tiang
Okay.
because I want to support like you know the stereotypes that like Asian not support but like fight against that like Asian like sexuality is less appealing to like whatever. And I want to be like, look, we can prove that wrong, and like we appreciate each other, blah blah blah, whatever, more of a statement. And I think I would unfortunately kill fairy godmother, just because I don't have an interest in having sex with her.
Okay.
So I'm just like,
This is the most revealing closer I think that
We've
we've
ever
that we've
ever
ever had.
I also think it's the most
Engaged
thought
in.
we've ever put into the closer.
yeah.
potentially.
Well,
I don't know I like the casting and the drafting questions too, but this was fun, and this the people got to know a little bit more about the thoughts that run in our minds.
The other revealing closer that I did was the vows one that we did with Sister Act. So there's something about Catholicism that really like gets us to
Yeah, what is that
reflect,
about?
you know?
I think there's a lot that we still need to unpack.
We still need to unpack.
I think there's a lot of things Catholicism has done to people. Moving on.
Moving on, we're done.
We're done. That was the closer. So thank you for listening. We'll see you in a couple weeks.
This movie was 133 minutes,
133 minutes.
and we're just a little over 2 hours probably. So good job us again,
Yeah.
keeping it close to the runtime or longer.
Yeah. Shall we dance? Dun dun dun. On a bright cloud of music, shall we fly? Shall we dance? Goodbye. Oh, perchance. Okay, bye. Thank you for listening to the best revival of a podcast, Showgays. You can find us on social media. Adam is at Adam Noecker on Twitter. RJ is at RJ Food Rocks on Instagram. And Molly is at Molly Matiny on Instagram. This episode was edited and mixed by Adam Noecker. This has been an Ampliverse production. You can find our show page and more information at theampliverse.com. If you'd like to send us your own takes on the movie we just watched, reach out to us via email and we might read it aloud on the show. Our email is showgaysmoviemusical@gmail.com. Don't forget to follow us on Apple Podcasts or wherever you find your podcasts. And as always, rate, review, and subscribe to help others find the show. And now, as always, the show must go on, so stick around to hear what we're going to be watching next episode.
Lot 666, a chandelier in pieces. Some of you may recall the strange affair of the Phantom of the Opera. Gentlemen.
Let your mind start a journey through a strange new world. Leave all thoughts of the life you knew before. Let your soul take you where you long to be. Only then can you belong to me.
Discovering voices, building worlds.